everyone, and welcome to another exciting commentary podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Shades at Night.
Shades at Night?
That's my YouTube name.
I'm so... Yeah, I know that.
I'm Kirk,
I know
everybody.
Did you feel... I don't know what that was. Shades is like, all right, if people listen to anything, it'll be the first 10 seconds. I'm Shades at Night on YouTube!
Exactly.
Go to my YouTube channel at Shades at Night. Shades, oh my god, it's been forever.
It has been forever. Been a while between drinks, as they say.
I'm so excited to have Shades back. I feel the same way I did last time I had Oliver on the program, where like it's been so long that it's like having a major guest star or something. It's like, and Shades at Night, like I feel like I want to have like a marquee with lights around it, like and tonight on Geekvolution, featuring Shades. There was a time where you were on often enough that it would be weird to put up that billboard. Well, yeah, of course, Shades at Night. Now it's like, oh my god, Shades at Night.
It's like one of those TV shows where I play somebody's dad, and it's like a big deal when they come back. It's like, oh, so and so's playing so and so's dad, and he's back for the first time this season. It's kind of like that.
You're the Geekvolution equivalent of William Shatner's big giant head.
Sure, that's quite apt.
Well, today we are doing a movie that I'm so excited to finally do a commentary. It's been a whole year already, Shades. I don't know where all that time went.
I know, right? It's insane. Like the Rogue cut only just come out and everything, so it still feels like it's very, it's like relevant in terms of like how recently, this film has come out. But it has been a year since it was in cinemas. That's insane.
I was half way into making a video about the Rogue cut when it suddenly occurred to me that it's been a year.
Yeah, it's insane.
And I was like, wow, it just doesn't feel that long.
Yeah.
So anyway, I obviously the last thing we did was the Wolverine.
Yes.
And I was kind of sad after that because we didn't really have anywhere else. Well, even before that, it was like, well, the X-Men movies are kind of done. We just got to wait for the next ones to come out. Finally, we have another one to do. And what's really cool is that next year, assuming that this is going to date this commentary, of course, but I guess we've already done that. We're talking about the Rogue cut. It just came out. They've just announced, of course, that Channing Tatum left Gambit, so
yeah.
Who knows if that movie's actually going to come out on time now. And if it does, Fox has 3 movies set in the X-Men movie universe coming out next year.
Yeah, that's and we were discussing this earlier. It's amazing, DC have 2, Marvel Studios have 2, Fox.
Yeah, that Fox would
3.
beat them,
yeah.
and with all things in the same universe, given that Fox has had a history of owning things in different worlds and not putting them together.
Yeah.
And I just think that's super cool.
Bryan Singer has talked about recently crossing over Fantastic Four and X-Men, and we'll see if that happens. We'll see what sort of, how Fantastic Four does.
Yeah, well, we'll see if anybody likes it and if they even, continue with that as a franchise.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how Fox, if they do decide to build a universe outside of X-Men, because it was interesting at San Diego Comic-Con when they had that big screen where it had X-Men Apocalypse in the middle, and then, there was Fantastic Four, Gambit, Deadpool, and Wolverine, which is what they're apparently calling the third Wolverine film.
I hope that's not what they end up calling it.
I mean, it's interesting, because apparently they are doing Old Man Logan, so could they call it Wolverine, Old Man Logan? I mean, I don't know if that is sort of a goofy title to the general public, I would think, so I would hope it's something a little bit flashier than just Wolverine.
Just Wolverine.
That's what I call the Wolverine anyway. So.
Yeah, and then what because me, I'm such a title guy, Shades.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so what clever thing are they gonna do that'll make me go, oh yes, of course, this one's called the Wolverine, but this one has no article adjective.
This one will be called X-Men Ending Wolverine.
X-Men Finales Wolverine.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, we should probably go ahead and get into our commentary. We're doing the regular cut, of course, of Days of Future Past. There's a really appropriate time, of course, to talk about this because the Rogue cut did just come out. And we're not going to be doing a commentary on that cut because even though quite a bit of extra stuff was added in, Shades, I don't feel like we would have enough necessarily to deal with and talk about for another 2 hours and 20-something minutes.
Yeah.
So so I'm not planning on doing a separate commentary for that cut, and we'll talk a little bit about stuff that they didn't use, and we'll talk some road cut in this
Absolutely.
particular commentary. I'm thinking, of course, we've both seen it, but just so folks know, we are going to be doing the regular cut because A, more people have access to that, of course, and B, it is kind of the cut that Bryan Singer intended over the road cut, and so I think it's the most appropriate one to do a commentary on. If you have never listened to one of these before, what we do is we create a podcast and a commentary simultaneously. So we're going to do our level best to give you some context for what we're talking about in case you don't want to actually watch the movie with us and you're just listening to this while you're mowing your lawn or feeding your dog. And but if you do want to listen to it as a commentary, you can line up your movie with this track. But don't press play yet. Wait till I say press play, or you'll be all off and it'll be weird. So here in a couple minutes, I'm going to say please press play now, and that's when you press play. Get it past all the menus and everything. Get it to timestamp 0 on whatever you're watching it, your Blu-ray or your Amazon or your DVD or I'm watching it on Google Play.
Oh, interesting.
Is how I'm watching it because I got the Blu-ray and it gives you, of course, the digital code. We used to do like digital transfer things, and I like that now they have it set up to where it's just a streaming thing. I like and they have it set up to where you can use like 6 different things. Like there's all these different things you can use. And I use Google Play because it's the YouTube player, and the YouTube player is really reliable.
Right.
So, it's just always weird because I'll watch X-Men: Days of Future Past, and it's like I'm watching a YouTube video.
Yeah, that is kind of funny. Like, yeah,
it feels kind of weird.
Legally uploaded this movie.
I have a really lame set of Google Play movies right now, Shades, because it's X-Men: Days of Future Past, and then the Road Cut, and like one of the Planet of the Apes movies, and like that's it.
Then the Wolverine, and X-Men Origins Wolverine. Oh, it's just X-Men movies.
And then later we have Wolverine. Anyway, well, we're gonna go ahead and get started now. Shades, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure, buddy.
I'm excited about it. Here we go. Everybody, please press play right now. Right away, Shades. There's a thing to be excited about.
Absolutely. It's not only does
the theater, I lost it.
It's same. Not only does the X stay on screen for those, few frames longer again, but the theme coming in right now.
Ba-da-da-da!
Oh, love it.
You're gonna hear me make that sound a few times during this. I don't mean to be a raving fanboy, but this movie gets me very excited. Shades, I am somewhere between calling this my second favorite and tied with X2 right now.
That's very fair. X2 is still my favorite. I mean, part of it for nostalgic purposes, like that was the first like X-Men film. I mean, I love X-Men 1 as well, and but X-Men 2 is just that perfect X-Men film, and but this is quality. This movie, it was so satisfying when it was so good because for a long time, like leading into it, I was like, oh man, I mean, I hope it's good, but there's a lot of mutants. There's, it's really a first class sequel. Like, I was hoping it would be good. And it blew my expectations out of the water. Honestly, yeah, I loved this film a lot.
There's a lot of things that this movie does that makes it a lot easier to kind of swallow some of the weirdness of earlier things. I don't mean that it makes, because I've heard people ask me, does this make X3 a better movie? Well, no.
I've been asked that as well, and my answer is often no. X-Men 3 still exists, so it doesn't, it doesn't make it better, but
no, yeah. And I mean, like, I still have to watch that movie, remembering that when it was made, this stuff didn't exist yet. So I mean, like, yeah. But on the other hand, it's harder for me to be as annoyed and upset with X3 as I used to be, yes, because we fixed a lot of those problems. Like remember when you and I did our commentary on that was a slog, and we were almost like wrist-slitting depressed.
It's funny. That was like back, if you can believe this, was back in 2012, I think, when we did that.
Is that when we did that? Wow.
Yeah.
Geez.
How time has flown. But like, yeah, I almost would like to go back and do that, do those commentaries again, just because, time has passed, and
Yeah,
opinions.
we've got a more complete picture now. But you certainly
Exactly.
can't. I think it's disingenuous to look at it, Shades, as well. This has been a building story, and now that we know where it was going, those things. None of this was planned. You know
No,
what I mean? So
absolutely
like,
not.
it was all stuff that was kind of fixed in retrospect, and with certain people coming back, and I mean, like, you can just there's so much of this you have to credit Bryan Singer for just for returning.
Yeah, yeah. I
Just
completely
fake as I mean,
agree.
like, and even with First Class, if he hadn't been involved with that story, what would it have been?
Yeah, now it's funny when you look back at, and I think we might have talked about this in the first class commentary, like, how that
Sorry, I
film.
gotta stop you for a second. I cried in the
Oh,
theater
yeah,
when when the John Ottman theme came back because I didn't know. I mean, I had no idea.
yeah,
And when I got this again, like I'm getting goosebumps right now, man.
yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
like I just it got me so bad. The thing you gotta understand about me is that I've got that same nostalgia Shades does for X2,
yeah,
and it took me back to high school. I mean, just
yeah.
oh god,
And
it was a big freaking deal.
I was like, 10 or 11 when X-Men 2 came out. So like it's one of those films that, I grew up watching it in a lot of ways. It came out before I was a teenager, and I was so into it still. And it was one of my first favorite movies. So I was the same, man. When that theme hit, I got so misty-eyed. I was like, oh man, it's X-Men and Bryan Singer, it's back. Like, that was it's something I'd waited for so long. And people can say whatever they want about Bryan Singer. I'm a big fan of Bryan Singer, and I have so much respect for him for coming back and making this film. And I can't wait to see what he does with Apocalypse. And yeah, people can hate on him, but to me, he's the guy. He's the X-Men guy. He gets it. It's
You know
very
what? It's fair
satisfying.
to say that he maybe isn't good at much else but X Men, but man, he knows how to make X Men.
Like I mean, I love some of his other films, and I've been someone who enjoys Superman Returns. Now, granted, had that film not been made, we might have got a decent X-Men 3. But regardless, yeah, I have a lot of respect for him for coming back and making this. And I was saying earlier, some of this stuff when they showed what they were doing with this film, like when I saw this Sentinel design right here, I was like, what is this? Like, you know, but
Like,
once again, like,
what do we cross a Sentinel with a phalanx? What happened?
it's like, why do the Sentinels have like this sexy physique? What's going on? Like, but so when people complain about how Apocalypse looks in these first images that we've seen, I'm like, we said this about the Sentinels, we said this about Quicksilver, you know, it's like we were wrong. Like this ended up being just fine. So like, I have faith in this man, and here we have Iceman doing some classic Iceman stuff. Boy, was this satisfying.
There's a word that comes up a lot in my mind when I watch this movie, and that is finally.
Mm, absolutely.
And that's the first one. It's well, Bryan Singer and that score coming back and stuff, but
Yeah.
then Iceman is finally doing his Iceman riding on the ice thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And, even though we got him icing up for those 2 seconds in X-Men 3, we get so much of it in this film that it's like,
It's fun.
yeah, absolutely. It's just, yeah,
This is as much a product of its time as X Men 1 and X2 were, and I think it's really interesting seeing the same guy, pioneering. I'm sure he didn't see it that way when he was doing it, but
sure.
pioneering the what would later become the onslaught of superhero movies, and then coming back to do this in the middle of what a lot of people are now calling the superhero movie renaissance. And look
Yeah.
at how much more comic book it looks now.
Yes. Yeah.
Look at all the stuff that we can get away with now that he might have been afraid to do back then, or that he might have even been, resisting himself because he wasn't a comic guy and he just wanted to make a good movie. And now he's embracing all this stuff
Yeah.
because he realizes that he can. That first of all, audiences will accept it because we've had Avengers now, and we've had all these different things. But we've had all these things that look straight off the page comic book when you look at the Marvel films and even X-Men movies that he wasn't involved with. And then also he realizes now, I think, that he can tell a good story that is thought provoking, uh, and still look like this.
Yes. And
You can do
something else,
both.
absolutely. And one of the things I do like is that this future here looks like an extension of what he was doing with X-Men 1 and 2. It's dark, everyone's still wearing black suits. But it's still, like you said, it still is embracing. We get a lot more wacky powers here and stuff like that. It is embracing what superhero movies have become.
In
And
fact, I would even go as far as to say that a couple things in this future stuff is a little too X3 for my taste.
in what way?
We haven't seen it yet, I don't think, or maybe we talked over it, I forget. There's the guy, I forget his name. There's the guy that has the power where where on his hand it shows like the symbol for toxic waste.
Oh, yes, so we did have that guy. So he's one of the younger characters in the war. But we also had him earlier as an old man, being in the camp. Um,
Oh, okay.
that's fair. I can
No, it's just
understand.
that stuff cracks me up because I'm like, okay, that's a man-made symbol. How does that happen biologically?
His mutant powers that he gets that. Um,
It's like
but
it doesn't make any sense.
but some of that I think is very in line with X-Men, like because there are
No,
character designs where it's
it
like,
is,
why would they
but
even have that? But on the notion of X-Men 3, I do respect the fact that he recognized that Ellen Page was great casting for Kitty Pryde, and that he even included Kitty Pryde. I mean, she's got
yeah.
yeah, like Kitty Pryde is the main character in a lot of ways in the Days of Future Past comic, and so here she's got the role that Rachel Summers had in the comic, which is having the power to project Wolverine's consciousness back in time. So, and yes, in the spoiler podcast I did say that I thought it was a machine that sent Kitty back. It's because X-Men have sent characters back in time 1,000 times, and I forgot. But it was Rachel Summers. She has the power that Kitty has here. So,
Well, and when I watched this, oh, by the way, yay for Wolverine still being allowed to smoke a cigar.
oh yeah,
Can I say that? Because we don't let people smoke in anything anymore.
we
Even
don't.
even even movies a lot. It's like don't take that away from Wolverine.
Yeah, Constantine wasn't even allowed to smoke in his own show.
Yeah, for the longest time, they finally got like one or two token moments with it,
Yeah,
but they had to twist executives' arms behind their back to get it.
yeah.
But anyway, and again, that's not me saying that I support smoking
No,
necessarily or anything.
absolutely not.
Certain character, you're not glorifying it just because a character does that.
Yeah,
That's all I'm saying.
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, the when I first saw this movie, I thought that maybe the table she was lying on was a machine that did something to enhance her powers or something because I don't know why she has this ability. I don't know how that
Yeah.
connects to going through walls. I don't know how you would even like why does she suddenly have it now when she didn't realize it back when she was a teenager? I just none of that really makes any sense to me.
I agree. And one of the criticisms I do have of the film is how does Kitty have that power? How is Xavier, like how exactly is Xavier alive? What happened with the cure with Magneto and Rogue? Or Rogue, that's the Rogue cut. But like, they don't explain that in the Rogue cut either, how Rogue has her powers again. And also that
Nope.
Wolverine has
Well,
adamantium claws
Magneto
again.
has his.
Yeah, yeah. So like at least
Yeah.
with X-Men 3 they showed Magneto move the pawn. But with Wolverine, he's got his adamantium back when his claws got cut off in the Wolverine. So, there's stuff like that where I'm like, well, they didn't even bother to explain that. But it's also something that doesn't bother me that much because the rest of the movie is so quality that
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
It doesn't kill it. And of course you can make the case. And by the way, I have lots of criticisms of this movie. It's just none of it kills it for me. You know what I mean? Like
sure.
it's so good regardless. Uh, I mean like some of this exposition about how exactly the time travel works, it's really arbitrary rules of time travel, and a lot of people
Sure.
will say, well, time travel's already that way because it's not a real thing, and it's
Yeah.
always going to be somewhat convoluted and stuff, and you have to just kind of go with it. But in this particular case, I think a lot of it is like really random, and just let's hurry up and get it out of the way so that we can make this conceit work. And then the movie's really good, so like it is a conceit. But you have questions like why does the fact that Wolverine can heal have anything to do with his with his mind intangibly, you know, and stuff like that. Like we're
Yeah,
making that too literal
sure.
at a point, and things like that. You know, that kind of stuff can be kind of irritating. You can also say with the future stuff that we're so far in the future. Well, I mean, I guess we're like 10 years, but we're far enough in the future
Mhm.
that there's a lot of stuff that has probably happened that, you know, it would be weird to suddenly try to explain. Like, where would you talk about it?
Yeah.
What, you know, and so, like, I can appreciate that there might be some explanations for certain things, like the adamantium claws and things like that, but we really are kind of just ignoring what we don't like about X3 and picking and choosing, right? Like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
this is the thing I want to talk about Shades, because every time I bring this up, people say, well, did you miss the after credit scene at the end of
Oh
X-Men 3? No,
God.
I
Yeah.
didn't. But here's the thing. There's nothing about that scene that would make you think that Professor X would be in a body that looks exactly like his body. That's the first
Yeah.
thing. And
Exactly.
people have said, well, Bryan Singer in some interview somewhere or wherever said a certain thing. It's not in the movie. You know, it doesn't count. We've not said that in the canon.
And
You know, of what we're watching.
for those who don't know what that is, so Brett Ratner at the time did interviews where he said that was actually Patrick Stewart's body that like turned around and said hello Moira, and you know it's meant to be Xavier's twin. And it's like that is the most contrived thing. Like, just it's so. I think what they were intending was, you know, you know, Xavier twin was born, you know, with like as a vegetable essentially because Xavier's powers are so grand. Um, but so they're kind of doing sort of similar to like a Cassandra Nova type thing, but I don't once again, like you said, none of that's in the film. None of that's explained. It's not that great anyway, of an explanation. And
Yeah.
so Patrick Stewart is just here as Xavier, and there's no, you know, yeah, like, and once again, he can't walk. So like, it's clearly not the body of somebody else because you'd think they'd have the ability to walk. So because the events of
Yeah, I mean,
first
people
class
try to
have
come up
happened
with
to him.
fan theories for why that would be and stuff like. But any way you slice it, it gets really contrived. And again, none of that's actually in the movies. It's a thing that I would love someone to make a little explicit. That's the big one, right?
Yeah.
Is just why that and how Kitty Pryde suddenly has this power she never had before.
Like I would love to see, you know, and Marvel won't do this because, you know, they hate X-Men. I would love them to do a comic book that's, you know, the events between X3 and Days of Future Past. Like I'd love to see that. You know, you could write Wolverine out of it straight away because he, you know, goes to be a homeless man in Canada.
Yeah.
But like, you know, how Kitty discovers this other power, you know, like how the cure wears off, you know, how Xavier comes back. You could tell a bunch of stuff. And, you know, I'm saying that and Cyclops couldn't even be present. So that goes to show how much I'd like to
Yeah.
see this. So
It would be a lot of fun to see. Well, and also
yeah,
because there's so much time in between.
yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't even have to be like a little mini series, dude. You could do a monthly for 2 or 3 years.
I
Like you
agree.
could
Yeah.
it could be a 50 issue story. You could do all kinds of cool things with it, and make it as, you know, complex and interesting and soap opera as X-Men always has been.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job with some viral marketing with this film for explaining events that, like, how things became the way they were. Like there was this cool website that sort of showed like the timeline of mutants in the world and like you know how things came to be the way they were. Like this cool slideshow that really set up some cool ideas for this movie. Like you know there was a baby that was born like you know with Colossus's you know armor because of radiation in Russia. Like cool things like that.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, they explained like what exactly happened to Beast because there is that throwaway, well, not a throwaway, it's a cool moment, but like where Beast asks Wolverine in the future, "Do I make it?" and he says no. Like, you know,
Yeah.
Beast is just dead in this world because Kelsey Grammer was too busy filming Transformers. But yeah,
Which is sad because of course Kelsey Grammer wanted to come back for it.
he did, yeah, and
Like he was excited about it, and that's why they got the cameo.
I love that cameo as well. It's great, and was so unexpected. But yeah, so Kitty has this power here where she can project people back in time, and it's like, how does that even work? How do you discover that you have that? Like, but it's you know, it's
By the way, this might just be my imagination, but somehow or rather, at least in that last scene we were just looking at, Hugh Jackman looks younger than he has the last couple of times he's played this role.
Hugh Jackman, I feel
I
like
don't know how that is, but he looks more like he did next to than he has in a long than he has anywhere else.
Hugh Jackman has done this interesting thing where, like, in 2009, he stopped aging. Like, to me, from Origins onwards, he pretty much looks the same. Like, there's a noticeable difference between like X-Men 1 and Origins. But like in X-Men 1, it is amazing how young he looks. Um,
Yeah.
but like especially like the way he's built, he's looked consistently the same for the last, 3, 4 movies, and I think that's pretty cool.
Well, Shays, let's talk about some other questions that aren't really filled in, and this is a thing that I think is kind of a problem for this particular movie. So you have things that just aren't explained, with the future stuff, and then with this, you just have Wolverine suddenly remembering things that
Yeah,
he shouldn't remember. I don't understand that. When he says that he slept with that girl many times, how would he know that? This is pre Weapon X.
well, and it's
Doesn't
funny,
make
they
doesn't make any sense.
that exists in the Wolverine as well, where he can remember, being in Japan.
Yeah, we
So
discussed that. Yeah, he
yeah,
seems to. And what's weird about it is he seems to suddenly have a lot of memories back, and I don't remember there being anything in any of the movies where he suddenly gets back a lot of memories.
there
And
isn't, but in this film, Wolverine does say to young Xavier that he helped him unlock his mind. So it's kind of referenced that Xavier helped him regrow the memories. Um, but
is that what he is that what he meant?
I mean, I think that's what he means, because what else could he mean?
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, I never thought to really read that. I thought it was uh, I thought it was more that just like he could sort of accept where he came from and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because when he tells him that like you helped me unlock my mind, it's not like he's helping Professor X remember things. Like when he has him talk to older Professor X, he's just helping him to get over insecurity.
Oh, well, it's like, but the line is that he tells Xavier that in the future you help me unlock my mind. So, like, what else? Like, why would somebody need their mind unlocked unless they couldn't remember stuff? So, that's how I take it. I think that's what's
Well, and I
intended. But
and I think that's how he got to Alkali Lake and stuff like that, maybe. But I don't
oh,
think that
I
he just
see.
suddenly
Yeah,
got all of his memories back, right? Like because remember, here's the thing. I thought what he was referencing was stuff we had seen in previous movies, not stuff that happened up to the future.
sure.
Maybe he's
I,
talking about that also. I don't know, but
yeah,
obviously it's another thing that's not made explicit enough. It's just suddenly and the reason that I one of the reasons that I don't really care for that, besides the fact that just it's confusing, and his not knowing who he is and the identity issues are such a big part of his character, is
yeah,
that one of the things that's going to be very interesting moving forward is if Weapon X doesn't happen at all, we're going to have a Wolverine that remembers everything.
that's true. And
And that's much more interesting if we didn't already, for no reason at all, have a Wolverine that suddenly remembered everything, even though he didn't used to. And of course, I love that thing with the ending where he just is apparently destined to have giant gaps in his memory,
yeah,
where we have future version of Wolverine all of a sudden doesn't know all this stuff. And I think it would be really cool if going all the way up to that in the new timeline, Wolverine remembers everything because Weapon X never happened, and then all of a sudden, in order to make this all happen, the sacrifice he has to make is losing this huge gap in his memory.
yeah, yeah. It is interesting. I do just want to point out, since it's on screen, we have Chris Claremont and Len Wein in this scene, and I think that's awesome. Like, Stan Lee's not in the film, but Chris Claremont is. So I think that's pretty sweet. Since Chris Claremont wrote Days of Future Past, so
And that is, if memory serves, yeah, his second cameo.
yes, he was in X-Men 3. He was the one with the lawnmower,
Yeah.
with young Jean. So Stan's in that scene as well. But yeah, yeah, he's been in 2 X-Men films, so I think that's pretty cool. I also wanted to bring up just earlier, Hugh Jackman's like a great actor. I think that everybody knows that. When he comes out of that building earlier, and he looks at the rabbit foot on the keys, and then sees the number plate is "You Lucky," the look that he gives of like he shakes his head in just like disgust. That's hilarious, but it's so
Well, and
subtle.
what's fun about that is it's like, oh God, why did I have to go back to 1973?
Yeah,
Because it's this look of recognition. Like the movie does a really good job of keeping in mind who people are and what they know and that kind of stuff. And so it's not just the 70s. It's he's already been through the 70s.
yeah, exactly. It's not like a whoa, look at all this retro stuff. It's oh man, I'm back to this time. Like, yeah, it's great. Um, like in the road cut, they cut it out of the theatrical cut where he says to Beast, "Oh, if only you guys had internet." And Beast goes, "What's internet?" Like, I'm glad they cut that out because I appreciate the fact that they don't do that sort of stuff, the really obvious jokes. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, it's kind of similar.
I
Like,
didn't I didn't notice that line when I watched the road cut.
yeah, in the road cut when they're talking about like whether it's the line where they say we have a phone book when they're looking for Quicksilver, and yeah, Wolverine says, "Oh, you guys don't have internet." It's like, yeah, no, I'm glad they cut that out. It's a little obvious to me.
Yeah, it would be subtle enough for him to just be like, oh God, oh yes, of course, a phone book.
Yeah, yeah.
He didn't have
Um,
to straight up say internet. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. How do you feel about the fact that Havoc just sort of gets a cameo here and isn't a major character?
I actually think this is good because it's the I don't need Havoc like still at the school. I like it being just Hank and Xavier. So the fact that Mystique knew somebody in this situation, I actually think is pretty. That he was the right character to use for that. What's quite interesting is 10 years have passed since X-Men First Class in this world. And, Havoc is the one that looks like he's aged the least. So
Yeah.
by the time we get to X-Men Apocalypse, he's going to be like late 30s or, and he's still going to look like a 23-year-old. It's,
Well, I mean, looking at screenshots that again, this commentary is dated. Looking at
yeah,
screenshots that we've seen for Apocalypse already, uh, oh, there it is, there it
yeah,
is, there's
there
that
it is.
goofy symbol. McAvoy doesn't look as old as he should.
No, but I think at least the bald head ages him. How much we
Well,
get
that'll
it.
help when we get there, but he doesn't have it the whole movie, I don't think.
No, no. But once again, Havoc's in that movie as well, and they've given him long 80s hair, but he doesn't look
That's
like
smart.
he's 38, like I think he's meant to. But
Well, the
anyway,
thing about all this, of course, is that there's this weird line you have to draw of it's a comic book thing, and in comics, characters don't really age like they do in real life, but also less time is supposed to have passed than it actually does. But in this, we
yeah,
started actually giving it years, but then it's ambiguous. Originally, and we've talked about this, but it's ambiguous originally with X1 and X2 what year they're set in. It's just the not too distant future. But then the
yeah,
problem is once you give all this stuff years for the stuff in the past, we know exactly when the future is in this movie. Like it's 2023, it has to be.
yeah, exactly. And it's funny as well because like to me, the Wolverine is clearly meant to be set in present day, even though it's 10 years in the future. Like stuff like that
Yeah,
is kind of amusing.
so it gets kind of, and then you get some characters that are too young for certain points, and other
Yeah,
characters that yeah, like it gets weird. Like I was thinking about this earlier today. I was going back and watching First Class again because it's been a while since I've seen it, and there's there's that line that Professor X has about Stryker's son William,
yeah.
and we're not told how old he is yet. But I'm like, is he a kid or is he like just getting out of high school then or what? Because then in X2, William Stryker has that line
About Vietnam.
about Woodstock.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, yeah, it's the same line because he has the line about I was, in Vietnam or you were, you know,
The line
at
was "sucking
Woodstock.
your mama's tit." Woodstock was the line, yeah,
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was allowed to
I
say
don't.
that. Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
think you can say that on this channel, but I'm sorry. That was I guess the teat. That was the line. I'm sorry. Anyway, I was just trying to remember it, and now I've said a thing that I wouldn't usually say on the channel. But anyway, so I'm like, well, then how old was he supposed? So now he seems like he might actually be uh, uh, younger in this movie that he should be,
Yeah,
or older or something. Actually, I don't even know what I'm saying right now.
because to me he looks like he's probably late 20s in this film, Stryker. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so I mean he has a son, so he might be in his 30s actually. It's hard to
Well, so
say.
I guess it's okay for this, but then it kind of makes me wonder how old he was supposed to be in First Class.
Sure, yeah.
But
And how
anyway,
old he's meant to be in X-Men 2 as well. Like,
exactly, yeah. It's not really important, but it's stuff that takes you out a little bit because you start thinking about it.
yeah,
Something I think is really interesting about the whole First Class thing is that they, of course, didn't actually really go to the school proper like it was a school.
yes,
And then there was an actual first class that went to classes that we never see that I
yeah.
guess weren't really X-Men and didn't go out on any missions, or at least that's the assumption I get. And they were open for less than a semester.
And
So
they
what's
had
kind of neat,
teachers. Like, who were these teachers meant to
who were
be?
they? Yeah. So what's interesting is that when we get to Apocalypse, we're going to have a lot more of what the original actual X-Men were supposed to be, or at the very
Yeah,
least, some of the X-Men that I grew up with in the '90s.
yes,
And it's going to be something much closer to what we wanted for the First Class for First Class. So, like,
exactly.
I know that when First Class came out, Shades, you weren't real keen on it because you didn't like who a lot of the First Class were. But now that
Yes.
we're going where we are going forward, I'm wondering if you're not going to appreciate that movie more going back to it.
Because you asked me if I appreciated First Class more after having this film, and
Yeah,
I mean, to me, my criticism of First Class has mainly been, I'm disappointed by what they did with the Xavier Magneto relationship because it's established in X-Men 1. They've known each other since they were 15, and in First Class they retcon that, and they really only know each other for likely a couple of weeks
a
before.
couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that really bothers me because, I got this sense that they were great friends when they started the school. Um,
And it's not
Even
just
X-Men
rushed.
3 gives off that impression. So,
Yeah. And it's not just rushed, it's a little forced because Professor X very quickly is going to his side and trying really hard to help him and sympathizes with him, and he's clearly a murderer.
yes, exactly. And
And I mean, like, I love a lot of stuff they did with their relationship. It's just it's too rushed and too forced. And I mean, like, I get that he sees him as a kindred spirit and all of that, but there's never any discussion about how he's gone around and killed a lot of people.
yeah, it's like I don't see like how they get to that. I mean, the thing I've always said is that McAvoy and Fassbender are excellent casting. Like, it's amazing that we had two actors that were also good for Xavier and Magneto when they were so perfectly cast in the first place. Um, so like McAvoy is so excellent, and here in this movie he excels. He gives such a great performance in this movie, and yeah, I'm really glad that because I mean, I would not that I was against the casting of McAvoy, but I'd really only seen him in like in Wanted before I saw First Class, and I was like, oh man, I don't really want that guy playing Xavier. But he of course that's just he doesn't really do movies like that, so he's tremendous casting as Xavier, and I'm glad he got to play a different version of Xavier in this film as well. This really down and out, just sort of no longer caring Xavier is something that's really interesting. And how by the end of this film, he plays an Xavier that is very close to what Patrick Stewart played. I really love that.
Yeah, seeing a version of Xavier that is this insecure and doesn't believe in himself or the cause anymore is fascinating and gut wrenching, and the idea that that if you take this guy out of the equation, what's the future going to look like is really interesting. Having said that, of course, the other big question that this would probably be the right time to bring up is, and remember you were earlier, Shades, you were talking about that comic series you'd love to see between the present and the future. I'd love to see a comic book about the original timeline set right here.
Oh yeah,
And the reason I say that is because a lot of what Wolverine ends up having to do in the past is to find a way to get Professor X to find his mojo again.
yeah. So
But
how did he
importantly,
find it in the
that
first place?
had to have happened. Yeah, the real reason he's sent back is the same reason that in the animated series version of the story, Bishop gets sent back, which is to stop an
Yes.
assassination.
to stop
And
Mystique from killing somebody.
yeah, I mean that's the whole reason he's sent back.
Yeah.
Well, um, so the only thing that he really needs to change is to make sure that that the Sentinels don't get made, by making sure that she doesn't, kill this person. Well, then how exactly did Xavier get his mojo back in the first place?
Yeah,
Like
but
there's how did the school get put back together? I mean, it seems like everything that happens with the time travel ends up being the impetus that gets things put back together to where they're supposed to be and makes things right again, and that works. I mean, there's not that like that's fine, but I would be very interested to know what it was in the first place, because by and large the future version of the mansion that we see at the end of this movie is pretty much what it looks like in X2,
oh
and
yeah,
there's still of course all this rocky political stuff going on there that has nothing to do with Sentinels
yeah,
yet. So I'm just saying, like, this is a fight that they're always going to have to fight, of course. But and I love where where the motivations ultimately end up coming from in this, and so it's not a problem that I don't know for that. But it is interesting to, it's weird that there's really no discussion about what it was in the first place
yeah. I agree. Yeah,
in
that's
the
interesting
future.
to see. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what brought him out of it. Was it Mystique killing Trask? Did that, this anti-mutant thing, did that make him realize, I'm needed? Like it. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what it actually was for the Patrick Stewart Xavier to bring him out of this funk. So, yeah,
Yeah. Well, and you know what? That's a good point. That could have done it. I mean, that could have been all he needed.
yeah. I love that Xavier has this photo here of Mystique from X-Men First Class. It's very clearly just a snapshot from that movie. It's
Yeah,
it kind of it
that's kind
bothers
of
me when
silly.
movies do that. I mean, it's also present in like the first one that comes to mind is Rises. The photo of Rachel is very clearly from the scene in the restaurant with Harvey Dent. It's like,
Yeah, and not to suddenly get off on another movie, but speaking of that, I've never had another place to mention this Shades. I always thought it would have been really funny if they recast her again just for that picture,
that would have been great. Yeah,
because she was a different actress in the first two movies.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't care for that flashback.
I
And I
agree
know
with that.
I'm very anti-flashback a lot of the time. I just don't feel like we really needed that. That seems like it's there. Am I right about this? Is that kind of just there, you think, in case people are watching this movie and they either don't remember or they're not aware because they didn't see the last one of the relationship he has with Mystique? I just feel like this is so much about this world, and and like soft rebooting it, and it's X4 and it's First Class 2 simultaneously. Like, if you're lost, you're just going to be lost. Like, I feel like this is not going to be a piece that really completely stands on its own.
X-Men First Class did not make a ton of money, really, like especially compared to this movie, because this movie did the best of the X-Men movies. But I think they were kind of worried of what if people have only seen the first three X-Men movies and then they go to see this because they see, the original cast is back and everything. Like, so I understand why they did it. I agree. I don't like it. I don't really like it in X-Men First Class either. I never really bought into the Mystique Xavier relationship. Yeah, it's a taste thing. I don't love it. But it is also so much of this film, and I think this film does it better than First Class did. In some ways.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is super important. And I say that this movie doesn't completely stand on its own. I guess I'm mostly saying that because I know these so well, so I have a difficult time imagining what it would be like trying to come into this movie and you've never seen an X-Men movie.
Oh yeah,
But I also think that it does as good of a job as it possibly could of being a thing that you could watch all by itself. I mean, like, when you look at any other version of the story, Days of Future Past, the future is always in a weird, new, uncertain place that you're unfamiliar with, and you could maybe come into this seeing it that way, right?
sure.
Like if you've never seen another X-Men movie, some of that might work.
I love
And
this painting on the wall of Oliver
yeah,
Trask stealing the leg from a little girl. I don't know what exactly that's meant to be, but it's yeah, interesting. Sorry, go on.
Um, oh no, you're fine. There, I think that is maybe even a direct reference to a cover of a period, I think a '60s period Saturday Evening Post, or maybe it's even earlier than that. Um, that's a Norman Rockwell thing.
Oh, okay. There you go.
And I think it's actually a direct reference to a picture that they used in an early. I say it might have even been 30s or 40s.
Right.
I have on eBay sold a first edition of the magazine that reminds me a lot of that painting. And I think it might be exactly the same thing,
Oh, okay.
but I'm not sure. This reveal that that
Yeah.
all the mutants besides Havoc got killed was haunting in the theater. I was like, oh my god,
Yeah.
really? We killed them all?
Yeah. It's when later Magneto says, Emma, Azazel, Banshee, all dead. Like it's yeah, it's interesting, that they kill all those off, and it's interesting there that what kind of made Mystique the most upset was or at least I mean I think this is what's somewhat implied is that Azazel, it was the one that really made her break down, especially because as we know Azazel is also Nightcrawler's parent, so were they
And of
intimate?
course
It's interesting to
that's
think.
in yeah, and I mean that's information, of course, that we bring to it, knowing the source material.
Yeah.
So super vague or not even quite existent.
Yeah.
Here that's a thing that will matter if they come right out and tell us that with Nightcrawler, and I would be
Yeah.
very surprised if they don't go there. I'll also be surprised if when we get to Apocalypse we don't do some kind of a character parallel with Nightcrawler and Quicksilver because of who the
Yes.
parents are. I imagine that that lineage and having parents that were not there for you when you were growing up and that kind of thing is gonna. I think family is gonna be a huge theme in that movie.
Yeah. And with a lot of characters they've chosen as well. Cyclops, similar story. Like
Yes,
it
yeah,
yeah. I love this set of the basement here that Quicksilver lives in. All of
it's
these
fantastic.
weird things that like he's got on his wall that is clearly stolen. And right there, Beast has finally said fascinating in an X-Men movie. It was very
Oh yeah.
throwaway, but he said it. Since obviously in the cartoon that was a reference to Dr. McCoy in Star Trek. Like it's um yeah,
Well,
interesting.
Spock.
Oh, Spock. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I just watched the other day that scene where it says, "Don't tell me it's fascinating." No, it's interesting. Like that. I just
Yeah,
thinking of
it's
that.
it's also really fun that Hank McCoy is watching a Star Trek episode about time travel a little bit later.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah.
The episode in question, by the way, in case anybody is curious, is The Naked Time,
There you go.
where at the end they suddenly find themselves in a time warp. I love how that episode ends too, where Spock goes, "You realize this means that we can just time travel anytime we want to, right?" It's like now we have the computation; we can just time travel anytime we
Yeah.
want to. It's pretty great. We didn't talk about it earlier, but I really like that reaction when Wolverine pulls out his claws earlier and it's the bone, and he's like, oh, that's right, I have bones back then."
It's like, oh man, it hasn't happened yet. This horrible thing hasn't happened to me yet. Yeah.
Yeah, this horrible thing that some version of it had to have sort of happened at least to my claws again later because I got
Yeah.
my.
I mean,
Anyway.
and we didn't mention this earlier, but I guess one could. I mean, this is purely speculation, but you could say that Magneto helped him get the adamantium claws again. You can kind of draw that parallel, or draw that conclusion, since Magneto is working with Xavier is working with what am I saying? Xavier is working.
With
No,
Magneto, yeah.
Magneto is working with Wolverine. Like,
Is that what you were gonna say? Okay. Well,
uh,
that's no, that's a great point. Yeah, because he could, and also that's such an interesting reversal, isn't it?
yeah.
When you've got Magneto constantly throwing Wolverine everywhere because he's got metal in his body, and then later on they team up and he actually puts it back on his claws. If that's what happened, that would be really that would have been cool to have
Since
a mention of.
Yeah, and since he appears at the end of the Wolverine and says that he needs his help, and Xavier wheels in and everything, like I mean, it's implied that they come together right there to begin trying to fight the Sentinel program. So yeah, somewhere around
Yeah.
there, he
They
could
did
have.
a bang up job too, right? Like
Oh yeah,
we talked. we've talked a lot about how it seems kind of inconsistent, the end of that and stuff. I could I can see a case being made the more I think about it that the Sanford and Son thing is funny. By the way, I love all the references to 70s stuff. I think Singer loves that kind of stuff. He is clearly a really sentimental guy when it comes to pop culture, and you can tell by the Superman Returns movie he made. And
Yes, yeah.
how nostalgic he gets for things, and Singer's exactly the guy to make a period piece like this. But anyway, and I think some of the fun period stuff in First Class might have been him also. I just thought of, but it is possible that there's a lot of Sentinel fighting that happens in those 10 years.
Yeah.
And that there's just a quick evolution of the Sentinels that they're fighting, and that there's something much closer to comic book X-Men all those years that we don't see.
Yeah. I Quicksilver is obviously one of the breakout characters of this film, and I dare say was far more memorable in this film than he was in Age of Ultron, even though
Absolutely,
he's
I
in
agree.
less of this film. But this smile that Evan Peters has, he's just his reactions to things later when he says "whiplash," like that stuff's really funny, and I am looking forward to seeing more of him and Fassbender working together because I think that combination is really funny. These two actors.
People have complained that he was just kind of here to break Magneto out and then written out of the movie. I think it's clear that they had a plan for him moving forward, and that certain things like that, you have to give movies a little bit of leeway where it's a standalone movie, but it's also part of a greater whole.
Yeah.
I guess I'm talking about that kind of thing a lot. But it doesn't bother me knowing that he's in Apocalypse. It might have been unfortunate that we didn't get to do any character stuff with him if this was his only appearance.
Sure.
Since we've had that problem with a lot of mutants. Like Angel had such a cookie cutter character arc in X3,
Absolutely. God.
stuff like that. But for him to just show up here and interact with these characters for a minute, he's serviceable in just the right way. I think. I think it's incredibly believable that it's like Professor X brings him in, and then Wolverine, I guess, brings him in, and then that's they don't need him after this, so why would he hang around?
Yeah.
They would
Uh,
have to contrive something to keep him in the movie, and what purpose would he serve in the story they're telling?
yeah. I agree. It's when he appears at the end of the film as well, watching Magneto on TV when he's talking about, forming a brotherhood, and it's obviously very clearly implied that he would be back in the future. And yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm fine with him only being in this section of the film. I don't know how he could have been in the rest of the film. Like, I don't know, the fact that they don't bring him to Paris. Like, if you do keep him in the rest of the film, events would have been far different. So, and I want to point this out as well. This is a big X-Men geeky thing that I just really like. This curl in Hugh Jackman's hair that's like down on his face. That's such a comic book animated series look. There's always that curl that kind of comes down on his head. Um,
yeah, I forgot about that.
when the fact that they do that, I'm just like, they don't need to do that sort of thing, but they do, and I really appreciate that sort of stuff. It's as an X-Men fan, I just think that's really neat.
One of the things that I love about time travel stories when they're done right is dealing with the question of identity and who people are at different points in their lives. And that's one of the things I really liked about the idea in the comics of bringing back the original five X-Men to the present, and seeing who they end up being if they experience our present for any amount of time. And there's a lot of question there of are they the same people or not. Seeing Wolverine interact with young Professor X is played for some comedy mileage, but is also there's interesting, and there's some depth to it. And Wolverine is finding out this is not the same person,
Yeah,
and having to help to find some way to mold him to that. And I like that he's not a straight up mentor character, because that's not Wolverine. But for him to have to interact with him and then find moments of irritation is both comedic, but also kind of gets my mind going a little bit and thinking, if you put this Professor X and the later Professor X in an actual room together, they're two entirely different people.
and we get that in this film. It's that scene when we get to it. I mean, oh boy, when I watched that scene in the cinema, like I turned to I was watching it with my brother, and I turned to him, and I just went, "Wow!" Like, because that was such an amazing sequence. And speaking of amazing sequences, here's the most talked about scene in the film. Um,
Absolutely,
yeah,
and it's one of the most memorable things in comic book movies now. I think,
yeah,
and I can't believe in a thing that gets as heavy as this does sometimes, and is serious and is juggling so many things that we can take the time to do things like this, and for it
yeah,
not to feel tonally inconsistent.
yeah.
It's fantastic. Now it doesn't make any sense.
That
I
he's
don't I
moving this
don't
fast.
know that he's listening to a song in real time.
Oh, you know what? That is very true. Maybe he has it like super fast.
He would have to have it. Yeah, he would have to have changed the speed on it because we see him press play. So this isn't just for our benefit. He is listening to this song in
Yeah,
the
he puts on
time
the
that he's
headphones.
moving in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I never even thought of that, but that is very true. Uh,
isn't that funny?
that is
It
funny.
doesn't actually make any sense, but it's great.
I do love as well, like the little things like you know, like poking that dude in the cheek and giving that guy a
Yeah,
wedgie. Like that stuff is so funny. And like I said, his smile when he like moves the bullets just there, and it's just yeah,
and
that
I
dude
think
punching
it's
himself. That's great.
and obviously it's a really subtle throwaway mention, and those of us that know the comics are gonna think more about it and read more into it than people that don't. But the fact that they, of course, made sure to reference, yes, this is definitely Magneto's son.
Yeah,
I think it's so interesting to look at the juxtaposition between them. That like this really immature kid is that guy's son. You
yeah,
know, like just how different people are. You know, I was talking about identity. How different people are because of their experiences, and that Magneto is only the way he is because of what happened to his parents and what Shaw did to him, and you know the way humans have been treating mutants and all these different things. And this kid has a totally different look at being a mutant and attitude that like he embraces it, he loves it,
yeah,
and the same way like Magneto does too, but of course he's really jaded about it. And this kid, it's more okay. I have to hide it to a degree, but he finds so much joy in it. And seeing the difference between this, you know, this kid that is Magneto's son and finds so much joy in being a mutant,
yeah.
I think is really cool.
And while mutants are still quite ambiguous to the rest of society as well, like I love that line he had earlier about what powers have you seen something nothing that anyone would believe. Like that's great.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
I mean, you get the sense that he's a little isolated and maybe he's somewhat sad about it, but he's hiding it and he's not talking about it. And it's easy, even as an audience member, to not think about that. The point I'm making is, I think they're setting up so much interesting character stuff with him that people are going to look back after what they do with him later and go, "Oh, okay, he was in just the right amount."
yeah, I agree. So
There's a
we get
lot being established there.
to this tremendous scene with Fassbender and McAvoy here. Um, yeah, I really dig this scene. This is like this is great Xavier Magneto stuff. Um, yeah, I really enjoy it. And I also love how Fassbender is clearly channeling McKellen here in a way that he wasn't in First Class. His Irish accent was all through his performance in First Class because apparently Matthew Vaughn didn't want him to. He wanted him to use his voice, his real voice. So, or his real accent, I should say. So here, when we, like I said earlier, it's like all dead. Like he really sort of channels that like inner Ian McKellen, and I love that. It's great.
We also have more of that sense of the somewhat moral ambiguity that Professor X has always famously kind of had,
Yeah,
that he doesn't always seem to even be aware of, because if you were that powerful, it would be very difficult not to abuse that power and take advantage of people to some degree. And like the fact that he has as much self control as he does, even when he does sometimes take advantage of people, is kind of astounding, right? I
yeah,
mean, like you think of other people that could have that power and wouldn't use it right, and that moment hit me like a ton of bricks, that you were talking about just now when I was in the theater, because it never occurred to me that Professor X could be held responsible for anything that's happened, but like Eric's got a point.
yeah. He does, and that's been one of the great things about Magneto in these films is that he often has a point that you can
He always
really
has a point.
understand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and that there really are two extremes here. Charles is somewhat naive. It's not a matter of he's always right and Magneto's always wrong. That like he's the level-headed one and Magneto's the one that goes too far. They both have extremes to a degree. Now Magneto is the one that is of course more extreme and often goes too far. And you have to have that so that we sympathize with Charles when he loses his legs at the end of the first movie
yeah.
or First Class. I guess not the first movie, but the one
The first movie
before
in the
this.
timeline. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I I liked earlier as well the whole exchange with Magneto and Wolverine, especially at the end where he asked him to pick all that stuff up. It's yeah, I really enjoy Wolverine interacting with Magneto because he like even when Magneto walks onto the plane and Wolverine just has this look of oh God, back when we weren't like seeing eye to eye and that sort of thing. Also,
Oh yeah, good point.
yeah,
Yeah, because Wolverine actually like being sort of, I mean, maybe not friends, but like working well with Magneto is such a weird counterintuitive thing to even get your head around.
yeah,
And I mean Magneto, often ends up having uneasy alliances with X-Men characters, but you don't see it a lot with Wolverine, and you almost wish you'd get to see more of that in the future because when he's dealing with Magneto in the future, there is never, and we don't see a lot of it, there's never a moment where he looks at him like, yeah, I hate you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
they seem to be totally getting along now.
I do love, and this is hats off to John Ottman again. When Magneto appears, the music just goes slightly darker because it's like, yep, the villain of all of these films is working, with the X-Men again. I loved that. That was just a really subtle, this whole soundtrack has a lot of subtlety and is really great, and that was a good example of it as well.
John
Um,
Ottman is so underrated.
he is absolutely, yeah,
He should get more, or maybe he's scoring movies I'm not watching. But I mean, like a lot of the big movies that we're seeing Hans Zimmer get, and that we're
yeah.
seeing like Michael Giacchino get. I mean, those guys are great, but Ottman should be getting some more high profile work, I think.
And Ottman is also the editor of this film.
Yeah,
Um,
and he edited X2 if memory
he did
serves.
edit X-Men 2 as well. Yeah, he's a very talented man. I have a lot of
Yeah.
respect for him. Um,
Well, you know what? Maybe he edits more than he. Because we never think about editors. We never like pay attention to editors' careers. Maybe he edits more than he scores.
he may very well. Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
I'd have to go look at a IMDb page. Something we should talk about. Maybe we can do more of this later on. But I want to point out, and I meant to do some of this earlier, just how often we are mirroring uh, and calling back to and paralleling stuff that happened in X2. This is not obviously plot point for plot point exactly that movie. That's not what he's doing. But there's so much like poetic
mm,
like echoing that movie all over this. And I think that's one of the reasons I love it so much is because I love that movie. And luckily, it's also telling a really good story. It's not just that for the sake of nostalgia. I think it's poetic. I think it works. I think that in rebooting this world, it's kind of neat that we're going back to a lot of the major important stuff and finding ways to echo it and revisit it and make it mean something again.
yeah.
And you mentioned that with Ottman's score earlier, that he was calling back to that thing. We've had this in really cool, subtle kind of places, when they're in the Pentagon. You've got a woman leading a tour, just like the woman
Yeah.
that led the tour at the White House at the beginning of
Yeah.
X2. You've got uh, uh, Mystique breaking into a place as someone else and
Yeah.
freaking out about things, or not freaking out, but like finding papers or something on a computer and learning something. It's all over it.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. That's really cool stuff. Even the stuff here, like I know that the chess playing between Magneto and Xavier is somewhat of a cliche now, but I do
Yeah.
like it here when he says "fancy your game." Like I like that, and the line that we just had of, or maybe we're about to have of, Mystique left me because you got in her head, and he says that's not my power. I really like
Oh
that.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
good stuff. The my favorite moment, you were talking earlier about McAvoy's performance, and he's just brilliant. And by the way, I shouldn't be this guy, but I'm going to take this moment to say to everybody that wasn't sure about him, even in first class, I told you so.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah.
I told you so because I have loved this guy from the start, and everybody lost their minds about how great Fassbender was in first class, and they're right, he's amazing. But for me, it was all about McAvoy's performance, and this movie it's turned right where, like, I mean, obviously Fassbender's still giving a great performance, but this movie is as much about him going on an emotional journey as Magneto was for first class, and so we get that great performance. There's this moment where he says, I think it's the best acting moment for McAvoy in the movie that we had a couple minutes ago that we talked over on the airplane, when he says, I did it so that I could sleep, but he doesn't quite get
Yeah.
the word sleep
Oh,
out.
I love that.
Oh my God! I had chills in the theater when he said that. It's
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah, I loved
just
that a lot.
amazing.
Um,
Have we already had the JFK line?
we have, yes.
Okay, we should talk about that. That is a stroke of freaking genius, is what that
Oh,
is.
yeah, great. Yeah.
Making JFK a mutant is amazing. Is a brilliant move.
And having, since the bullet curves and having it be Magneto trying to save him but accidentally killing him, I think is what's implied there. Like that's really cool as well. I like that.
Oh, it's not just implied. I mean, that's the moment where Professor X suddenly goes, "Oh crap! I've been wrong about everything."
Oh, I just the fact that the bullet curved and that was Magneto. I mean that makes sense, but like the fact that he would have accidentally killed him. Um,
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, now what doesn't make a whole lot of sense is like was his line of sight off or what? It's just a bullet. Why couldn't he control it?
yeah, because it's moving so quickly. Like he must have he heard the shot, tried to move it, but he accidentally killed him with it. I mean, it's
Or maybe just he couldn't quite get to it on time, so it was still too much in the trajectory it was in.
yeah,
Because remember that the bullet hits him in the head,
yes.
so it could have been that it was going to hit him in a slightly different part of the head, but either place it still would have killed him.
And because there was two shots as well, wasn't there? So
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Good point.
yeah.
But I just thought that was so cool, and I think I've told this story on the channel before, but I want to mention it again in case people haven't heard it. I'll say this really briefly. In the theater, there was a guy sitting next to me, who said something hilarious. I lost it when they brought that up, and the first thing I said, and I can't believe I said this out loud. I never do this in the theater, but I couldn't help it. I said, "Oh my God, what was his power?" Like JFK was a mutant. What's his power? This guy right next to me turns over and he whispers, "Politics."
This scene here as well. This was the scene that I presume. Uh, oh no, it wasn't. I was thinking that this was the scene that was in the mid credits of Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2, but it was no, it was the scene with Toad and Havoc and everything earlier with
Oh,
DC.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, where we were just like, why are we watching a scene from X-Men in a
Th-
Spider-Man movie? Okay.
yeah. This I'd actually like to bring up because I remember
Yeah.
when that happened, I went like the Cerebro doors close and an X appears. I went, oh, like I thought, oh my gosh, this is they're gonna cross them over. Like
Yeah.
but then it was just a scene from Days of Future Past, and I was like, okay, well that was they just sold ad space. That's weird. Um, so yeah. Oh
Yeah. I thought that was sort of an unfair move because people are just used to these mid and end credit scenes now.
yeah,
They're waiting for a thing that's going to be connected. So once again, Ottman's score, he's bringing back the Striker theme,
yeah.
and
And
it's so subtle. And I bet 95% of people wouldn't even pick up on that.
oh yeah, yeah. But it
And
is
it's
true
so
fans of that
cool that
film
he
that
did
do.
that.
Yeah,
Oh god, and of course, you and I are probably just losing it when we hear stuff like that. Like,
yeah, yeah. And it's
oh
great because it kicks in. where it kicks in when you also realize, oh my gosh, Wolverine is looking at Stryker. It kicks in
Yeah.
at the perfect moment. It accompanies it great, and this sequence is by far my favorite sequence of the film.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, just this Wolverine freaking out and getting flashbacks from X-Men 2, plus this fight to try and get to Mystique, Beast turning into Beast, and the fact
Yeah.
that we go back to the future in this scene as well, no pun intended. But yeah, I love this sequence. This was the sequence that made me go, oh man, this is the X-Men epic I've been waiting for. This was just, yeah, this was it.
This is such a complicated. We're talking about Ottman a lot.
Yeah,
What a complicated editing job, right? Like you're not
yeah,
only cutting between the past and the future, but you're also throwing in all of this footage shot on you know like period film
yeah,
that you'd see in like a reel to reel machine. I thought that was a stroke of genius in the theater. It looks perfect.
yeah.
Like clearly they're not doctoring a thing. They really got one of those cameras and shot that way. Or at least it sure looks it. And of course they've got to put CG in it.
Yeah,
It's cool.
yeah, it
Now,
is really
now,
cool.
these flashbacks to the Striker stuff do not bother me.
Oh no, no, these because they serve a purpose, you know.
They do. Yeah, I mean, they're memories. He's remembering stuff. I also think it's almost a slap in the face to Origins
Oh,
because
it absolutely is, yeah.
when he's remembering Weapon X, they're showing you the little flashback stuff they shot for X2.
Now it is funny because
It's totally contrary to Origins.
I have like watched this frame by frame to see what they actually show, as also with
Of
this later,
course you have.
yeah, with Wolverine where he where like Xavier looks into his mind and looks at all of the horrible things from his life. Um,
Yeah.
so I love that reaction there. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
When he sees Beast, yeah, it's great. So good.
yeah. But yeah, I have looked at it frame by frame, and there is a couple of shots from Origins. But what I think is particularly amusing is that when he sees like Brian Cox turn into this movie's Striker, they don't even bother with Danny Houston. I was like, oh, poor Danny Houston. Like, it wasn't his fault.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't do a bad job or anything, but
No, and also is like a perfect between point for those two actors. I think, and
oh, yeah.
we haven't talked about this. The design for Beast in this film, I think, is a lot better than First Class as well. It's not cat like cat Beast. It's Beast. It looks like he just looks more like what I would hope Beast would look like in a film. I think they did that quite well.
Yeah, and you can much more buy him aging into Kelsey Grammer.
Exactly.
So once you see that, I also think it's kind of fun that when he gets older, he just puts on 30 or 40 pounds and doesn't care. Nothing against Kelsey Grammer, but he's obviously bigger.
Yes. And I do.
He's like, I'm a politician now. I got a desk job. I eat a lot more pizza.
I also quite like this thing with Beast that they do that they totally didn't need to do in the film, but the part that we're about to that there with Stryker looking at the bone claws was tremendous.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, that's great.
yeah, but this thing that we're about to have here,
Because I mean, that's the guy that he's supposed to turn into the Wolverine.
and there's Bryan
And
Singer, by the way.
this is never going to happen. Oh, that is Bryan Singer!
Yeah, we'll get him again
You
in
know
a
what?
second.
And
There
you
he
know
is.
what? That is probably Bryan Singer using the camera that he is getting that footage with. And he's probably getting footage that we're seeing in the movie.
So this part here with Beast looking at all these, all the cameras, and taking photos and filming him. That stuff is like they don't need to do character stuff with Beast here, but they did, and I love it. It's great.
You're right. Yeah, and how in the world? I mean, this is the reason the movie's so great, Shades. How in the world do they juggle all this?
Yeah,
We got
that's why
this
I
many
say this is my
characters, and I care about all of them. And they
yeah
like even characters that don't have quote unquote character arcs. You've got in an ensemble movie, you've got characters that are the protagonist of the piece, and then you have supporting characters, and he's probably something a little bit closer to a supporting character.
Yeah.
But and also you might have arcs that kind of morph over time through movies because this is not a thing that completely stands alone. There will be more things. But I mean, like that's like a Quasimodo moment.
Yeah, it
I mean,
is.
like that, or like a Frankenstein monster thing. I mean,
Yeah,
like we're calling back to all of the freak things where the freak is finally realized by the world and how they react, and they're scared of him, and he's a monster. And I
yeah,
mean, that's classic. I'm so glad that that's in the movie. And you're right, they could have cut it. That could have been part of the road cut. I'm so
yeah.
glad it's here. We
And
haven't talked at all about the road cut. I just want to tack that on and say at some point we should talk about some of that.
sure. Yeah, like it's funny because we haven't really. This is where the road cut actually becomes a different version of the film in around this time because
You're right, but there's a major scene or there's a major extension to a scene at the beginning that is the one thing I wish was still in here, and that
the
is
Scarlet Witch thing.
no.
Oh,
I don't know what you're talking about.
oh, okay. I'll bring that up in a second. But yeah, go on.
Yes, please do. Sorry. No, the big thing for me is the extension of the exposition scene where suddenly um sorry what's his face by
Bishop.
Bishop gets
Yeah.
dialogue, uh and I think that scene is really important and they shouldn't have messed with it.
I actually kind of am glad they cut it because I think it was something that actually did bother me a little bit was when Bishop said, "My people need to vote," and Xavier looks around the room and goes, "They just did. They're in." I'm like, Xavier, would you stop reading everyone's mind? Settle down, mate.
Okay,
Like,
that's totally fair, but you could have cut it even before that. Okay, like what's important is not that part. What's important is that somebody is asking the existential questions.
sure.
When you're dealing with time travel and you're gonna say we're gonna change. I mean, yes, it's a dire, horrible future, but we're gonna change everything positive and negative that's happened to you over the last however many years,
Mm.
or actually in this case, going back to 73, maybe your entire lifetime.
Yeah,
You have to like human condition. We're gonna ask the selfish questions.
sure.
You see what I'm saying? Like we're gonna say I don't know if I'm really okay with that. And too often in these kinds of things, I see characters just go, "Oh yes, of course, the future's horrible," and they're completely altruistic, and they just immediately go, "Yeah, yes, of course, let's change the." People would not do that. They would ask
Sure.
questions. Like they might ultimately land on, "Let's do the selfless thing." But I'm so glad that somebody spoke out and asked the questions.
That's a great
And
point.
and
Yeah.
I hate that's not actually in this version. That's the one thing I wish we had.
Um, it's
Anyway,
funny in the road cut there is a lot more there's more scenes with Mystique and I almost feel like this scene here that we're watching currently with Mystique could have easily been part of the road cut but I feel like it was kept in because Jennifer Lawrence um,
yeah,
so
good point.
she yeah I yeah I'll keep my mouth shut about that one but something that I was going to say earlier about the Scarlet Witch so
What do you? I don't know what that even means. You just not like Jennifer Lawrence,
Oh,
or
Jennifer Lawrence is fine, but it's clear it's kind of similar to what happened with Halle Berry in X-Men 2 and 3. Like she gets a lot more screen time because she's Jennifer Lawrence and she's famous now, like an Oscar winner. Like it
oh
bothers
boy,
me.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, like because when you said that, I sort of just thought it's kind of fun to come up with at least one or two token shots where she actually gets to not have to have the makeup on. But I didn't. It didn't occur to me that it's because she's famous now.
Yeah,
Maybe so. It's just she was such a major part of First Class that I think it's a logical extension to continue to make her a big character in this.
oh yeah, I mean that's fair. Like she should be a main character in this, and she was in the comic as well. So I agree with that notion. But just I am. She is Jennifer Lawrence too much in this film. Um, I think like especially
Wow,
when she morphs into her in Vietnam. I was like,
that's fair. There's a thing I never would have
why?
thought to criticize. Yeah, you know what though? That one I did wonder about, and I did. It didn't occur to me why they might have done that, but yeah, I was like, you would not have a girl in that costume right there.
Yes,
That would not have happened.
yeah. To me, it was like okay, and if you didn't know, this is Jennifer Lawrence. It was like
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, you know what? You got me there. You got me with that one.
Um,
Yeah, yep. You got me with that one.
What I'll say with Scarlet Witch before I
Yeah,
forget. So,
yeah.
in the road cut, they enter the Xavier, Wolverine, and Beast enter the house, and there's the little girl that says, "I'm a princess. What are you?" And Wolverine looks down at this girl, slowly takes off her glasses, and goes, "I'm the Wolverine," and moves
That
on.
was such a weird line, and I
What
was
a
so glad they cut that.
Yeah, same. But then
I did not understand that. I thought they were maybe because I was expecting some kind of funny like retort, right?
yeah,
I thought that they were doing another cool like nod back in like nod back to X2
yeah,
when
with the
he was
cat,
like when he
everything.
was like I'm yeah when he was like I'm the professor of art.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so then the mother says to the little girl, "Go upstairs and bug your sister." And she goes, "But she bugs me." So it's clearly meant to be a reference to Wanda is upstairs, being weird, which,
Oh.
yeah,
Wow. Okay. That's a little cryptic. I wouldn't even thought of that.
I mean, that's clearly, I mean, why would they have another sister? Because,
I'm not saying you're wrong, but whoosh over my head. I did not even think of that.
yeah, that's what it's meant to be clearly, but,
Okay.
um,
I'm glad they cut that though.
same,
When
yeah,
he was like the Wolverine, I'm like, why is that even in there? Like witty retort or something.
yeah. Um, Yeah, this stuff is cool as well uh with Xavier reading Wolverine's mind to know that he thinks that they might have lost.
One of the best ideas in this movie is that Professor X has to sacrifice his legs in order to have his powers.
Yeah,
That he can't have both. And I think it's really neat that you have this, you kind of turn this idea, this metaphor on its head, where when he's walking, he is completely unsure of himself. And it's when he's in a wheelchair that he's found himself.
yeah,
And I really like that. So like he's standing on two legs, but it's a lie. He's
yeah,
not really. And when he's in the chair, he's sacrificing a normal ability in order to have his supernatural ability because when he's using his powers, like that's his that's his gift to the world. His strength lies in his mind.
yeah,
And I always like the idea that Professor X is in a wheelchair and can't walk and isn't in on the action stuff because his power is his mind.
yeah,
And I love that they just attack that, head on here. One thing that's interesting, I thought of this watching First Class earlier today, is that Hank clearly has modified his formula quite a bit because originally it was supposed to be a thing that would let you uh, look human but still have your powers,
yes. But
and it doesn't do that now. Now it takes away your powers.
well, it's funny because the formula that he had in first class was meant to do that, but instead it enhanced them, so he, was wrong. Um, so heaven forbid what Mystique might have looked like had she taken it. Um,
That's a great point. Well, and also that never made any sense for Hank. We might have talked about this with First
yeah,
Class,
we did, yeah.
but when it's like oh it'll by the way there's the chair and that's awesome.
Oh, that was
But
a
when
great
it's like
reveal, yeah.
but when it's like hey you like how many different kinds of chairs have they had now in the X-Men movies? But when it's like yeah it, you'll still have your powers. Well, I can kind of see that with certain people, but Beast powers is a physical manifestation. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense.
I,
Anyway,
I think I brought up in that commentary, like, he won't be able to run as fast as he can with regular human speed. Like, so what would his abilities be?
yeah, yeah. I guess then they're saying that being smart really is one of his mutant powers.
Yeah, I guess. Um, and here we also just had a reference to Jason Stryker.
Right.
So that was cool. I loved the zoom on Stryker when he was asked about that. It was just one of those, hey, if you're a fan of the films, you should get this. Like, it was just, that's one of the things
Yeah.
that I think is most satisfying about these films. If you've loved and followed these films from the beginning, there's a lot here that just makes you go like, oh wow, they clearly care about those of us who have watched all these films.
Stryker is such a sad, tragic kind of character, right? I mean,
Yeah,
he's fighting for his country here. He cares. He thinks he's doing the right thing. He's working with this guy that has already come to something similar to where he will later about mutants. They have very different philosophies, of course. Their motivations are very different. But both of them think are ultimately that we have to eradicate mutants, one for revenge and one in order to save our race. He's Magneto in reverse.
yeah.
But with Stryker here, he's wet behind the ears. He's naive. He thinks he's just doing the right thing. I love that they've got him standing next to Bolivar Trask. I mean,
Yeah.
that is fascinating.
And here's the
What a great
hallway.
idea. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, when this showed up, I was like, oh wow.
I
This,
don't think we were sure we'd ever see this again.
yeah. And obviously it was in the trailer, so it was great seeing it there. And I think like one of the first shots from this movie, that like first photos of this movie, was that shot right there, of the three of them, well, two of them standing there, and Xavier in the wheelchair. But yeah, it's
Oh,
what
God.
I was going to say earlier. We haven't talked about Trask, and I think I just think Peter Dinklage was such tremendous casting.
Shades, real quick, there is an obligatory thing I feel the need that one of us has to say, and that is, this sure is a round room. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I
Sure is a big round room.
yeah, I was hoping Wolverine would say so. This was always a big round room. Um, but yeah, so I think Peter Dinklage is really great as Trask, and I also should say Josh Hellman is really good as Stryker as well as this young Stryker. But yeah, Dinklage was just a great addition to this cast, because everybody else has been in these movies before. In this movie that's a major character. I know we've got some New Mutants in the future, and I guess we've got Quicksilver as well. But in terms of major characters that are throughout the entire film, like he's the new character, and he's really good in that role, Dinklage.
I feel so much for and feel like I can sometimes even relate to what Professor X is going through with this. There's so much pressure on you when you're in a leadership role like this, and you have so much of the weight of the world on your shoulders, that to feel like you're like a kind of a shadow of your former self, and you don't know how you're ever going to get back to that again. I think it's something that a lot of people that a lot of us on some level can kind of resonates with us. And when he says that it's not Cerebro, it's like I'm like what I had is broken.
Yeah,
It it's so sad.
yeah.
And
This
and
part
I
here
think
where
that
where he shakes his hand,
there's really there's a
that's
meta
oh
yeah, there's a metaphor here that again I think resonates with a lot of people.
yeah,
And one of my favorite lines in the movie a little bit later is when I forget who it is, Hank or who it is, that says the power is back on, and Professor X says, "Yes, it is."
yeah. It's great.
Oh boy, this is a brilliant script.
It is, yeah. And like I said, this is another great sequence in the film, where we see all these horrible things from Wolverine's life. And how it's just like, you poor man. Like that's
Yeah,
yeah, because Wolverine's life is hell. When you look at it, like he so much terrible stuff happens to him because he's been alive so long. We see him basically like a charred body in the beginning of the Wolverine. We see Sabretooth stepping on it, like crushing his bone claws. Like we see all these horrible things, including him having to kill Jean. And yeah, like that is Wolverine's you know character in these films and in the comics as well. But like in these films, like he is the focus, and but he horrible things do happen to him.
and remember we've seen Professor X, in, the Patrick Stewart version, later on in the future do this very same thing, and
Yeah,
it's very interesting to see the different reactions of the two men because Professor Xavier is ready for it.
yeah,
The later Xavier, he's confident and sure of himself, and he's experienced, and this guy is not ready for what he sees. And when he says, "I don't want your future," um, it makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
Of course, importantly, when he says, "I don't want your future," I think it is somewhat important to know that. Well, yes, that's the point. See,
Yes.
that's why we need you to kind of get your act together here, pal, because
Yeah.
you're gonna have it. The point is, your timeline before I got here gets to my future.
Yeah.
So
But
you should probably try to get yourself together. But like, there's so much pressure on him. He's gonna break. I mean, like, this is a Professor X that I would imagine if he didn't have this moment with Patrick Stewart, I mean, he'd be on the verge of suicide.
yeah, when he says, he doesn't want their future, it's that he doesn't, want that in his mind. Like, this whole notion of,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah, like when he first heard the voices, he thought he was going crazy, and later when he also says, like the line you said earlier, I lost my power so I could sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he doesn't like having all of these voices in his head and all these memories and thoughts. And this part here, when they both say Charles to each other, I love that. That's great. But yeah, it's also
Well,
fun.
and maybe what you're sorry, real quick, maybe part of what you're talking about too is he doesn't want to be part of this world. Like he's been trying to cut himself off, and he's not living, he's not having a life, and he'd rather do and like he's an addict, he's an addict now, and
Yeah,
I mean like he'd rather just live out the rest of his life behind those doors and let this mutant stuff deal with itself.
yeah. I love how.
Once again, I told you so. I said with First Class, McAvoy looks like a young Patrick Stewart. You put these guys together, and you would totally buy that guy turns into Patrick Stewart.
And
I mean, you're
something
looking at him. You're looking at him with a mustache and long hair, and you're buying it.
something that
I'm buying it.
I think that is really cool about what McAvoy does is that he has that Xavier frown, like that,
Yeah,
his eyebrows, like that's sort of one of the traits of Xavier in the comics is that
in the comments.
yeah. Comment about how you feel about Patrick Stewart's eyebrows in this.
Eyebrows. Yeah, yeah. We want to see lots of comments about that.
Yeah. But yeah, he has that look where he gets that Xavier sort of stern look on his face, which is great. But I love how this scene has slowly come into focus. Like when he first sort of arrived in this scene, McAvoy, everything was really blurry and distorted. I love how it slowly came into focus there, his mind becoming, clearer at the longer he's there. Just that stuff is so well done. And you don't notice it unless you're looking for it or you're subconsciously noticing it. But yeah, tremendous.
Patrick Stewart, or the older version of Xavier, I think simultaneously represents what he needs to be, what he probably at one time hoped he would become, but also to a degree what he used to be.
Yeah,
And it's very interesting that looking at this like 80-year-old version of himself or whatever,
mm,
he's seeing, he's reminded of who he used to be, and you can see this progression in that scene. It's such a short scene, but you can see him becoming himself
yeah, absolutely.
while he's it's wonderful. Oh yes, this is who I am.
Yeah,
I just needed to be, and like the speech about hope and all of that is important, but I think there's a lot more going on there. There's a lot of subtle like stuff that you couldn't even really articulate and put into words. That it's a lot more. Oh yes, this is me.
yeah,
Once again, identity stuff, and so like I said earlier, Wolverine looking at this younger version, he's not really who he'll become later. But then also to some degree, he's always been that guy, and he just has to come into it.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
This
this all looks a little too CG,
it
really.
does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I've never really thought about this before, but I'm not real impressed with this actually.
Because this film got nominated for an Academy Award for special effects, and it's the first X-Men movie to be nominated for an Oscar, and it's like it took
I
this
didn't
many
I didn't
films.
notice that. Wow, I didn't
Um,
know that.
yeah, but yeah, that is the one sequence that looks a little funny. Even though I do love it, I love Magneto like using his power to get on board the train. I thought that was really interesting. We haven't seen him do something like that before. Um,
Good point.
but yeah, so this is where the film would have taken a different path in the road cut. I do like in the road cut where Bobby says, there is somebody that could take Kitty's power. And looks at Magneto and says, "She took your power once." And Magneto goes, "Rogue?" He's so yeah, I love that. Once again, calling back to previous events and calling back to X-Men 1. It's yeah, and there you go, just that simple edit there, and the path of the film changes.
Well, I like both ideas to some degree. I like the idea that suddenly the characters in the future are involved in making sure that the past, happens the way it's supposed to. But I also like the idea that we're given with this version, which is they're all kind of helpless.
Yeah,
Like there's really nothing they can do, and it's kind of in these people's hands now at exactly the moment where Professor X has found himself again.
yeah,
Like we've changed the course of history now. At least earlier than it probably happened in the original timeline, because we know once again that at some point he becomes that guy anyway. But I guess it just has to happen earlier now to make sure that Mystique doesn't kill anyone.
yeah. And
Um,
also in the Rogue Cut, we have the scene where Raven comes to the mansion, and they have that scene with Raven and Beast, and she destroys Cerebro, and so they don't know where Raven is going, but they figure it out just by watching the TV that, oh, she must be going there, which I think is pretty. I like this version much more, where Xavier looks back and sees the ticket that she dropped. I like that far more than,
that seems a little less convenient, doesn't it?
yeah, she must just be going to this thing. So yeah.
I also really don't know how I feel about that whole thing with her and Beast
Yeah, I'm not a.
in the Road Cut. Like I'm kind of glad they got rid of that. I like giving them a scene together is good because I always liked the idea of them. At least playing with the idea of being together, and there's some really interesting comparison contrast between them that I never would have thought of without putting them together. But I just think that he gets thrown under the bus a little bit
Yes.
in getting with like letting his emotions get that much of the better of him. Like he's got to know that she's there for some sinister purpose.
Yes, and the fact
And
that
and then nobody talks about it. Like he's like, "Oh, sorry, I made a mistake," and then there's no discussion of it after that.
yeah, and also the fact that there's other things you can bring up, like Xavier doesn't sense her, Wolverine can't smell her, like stuff like that. That you could
Yeah,
also
how does
argue.
she get in that house
Yeah.
without anybody knowing about it? No, that's a really good point. And also I think it. And I'm saying this in hindsight, having seen this version, but this is just better paced.
I agree. Yeah. I think the scene where in the future where Iceman and Magneto team up and go into the house and find Rogue. I do like that stuff, and I like the fact that we got some more of Iceman and some more stuff in the future. I mean, Iceman dies earlier in the Rogue Cut, but he gets more scenes, which is ironic. But I do prefer, what they ended up doing, and I like the fact that Kitty was the one that kept on going and fighting through it, even though it makes more sense to do it with Rogue since she was a bigger character in the trilogy. I do like it being Kitty, and that is somewhat personal preference because I like Kitty a lot as a character, but yeah, I like how they did it instead. I like that Iceman's the last line of defense in that room later in the film.
And I also like, and again, it's kind of neat because there's different things to like about each cut. I mean, I like the idea of giving Bobby an epic sacrifice. I think partly because we see a major character die before suddenly all of them do in one scene.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of nice to do that, to do one earlier so that you're not thinking so much when they all get killed. Oh, yes, of course. Everybody's getting killed at once
yeah.
because we've got to ramp up the tension and everything and hope to god that we fix the past and everything when that's kind of a cliche of things like this where when you know that you can kill off versions of characters you suddenly arbitrarily let everybody die real quick, whereas usually you would make sure that they could stay alive because they're major characters, and either way it seems kind of contrived.
Yes, that also, and the fact that it shows how much danger it is to go outside.
Yeah.
That they could die anytime.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can make the case that it's not too contrived that they do all die there because they're getting the giant onslaught of all these
Yeah,
all these Sentinels and stuff. But I did think that in the theater. I was like, oh yes, of course they're all going to get killed here because we're about to have a. I don't want to say 5 minute wrap up. It's not too quick or anything. But we're about to fix everything, so we got to see all these characters. These other versions of these characters die before the hope and redemption happens. Not redemption,
Sure.
but the hopeful kind of ending ends
Uh,
up happening.
I also
Um,
like just there that Magneto had the balls of metal like he did in X-Men 2
yeah,
when he came out of the
in
prison.
X2, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and here
really
he
cool.
is
Well,
revisiting the Pentagon. It's now this obviously this helmet is not what he had in First Class, but I do like the fact that the coin that he used to kill uh,
yeah,
uh, uh, Shaw was there as well.
Shaw. That
Um,
coin is such an important symbol. I'm glad
yeah,
that we saw it again.
and it's funny because they actually do focus on that in the road cut. They add a few more seconds of him actually noticing that it's there.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which was cool, but I do like the fact that they have Havoc's melted chest plate and they have the wing of Angel Salvador. Like that stuff was nice to have there just to tie it together. That was pretty cool.
yeah. The one thing about the road cut that I do kind of there's a really neat symbol there that I sort of wish was here somehow, which is the X mansion in 2 different timelines not being what it's supposed to be.
Oh yeah, when they
I just
transition,
love that.
that
Yeah, the transition is
yeah.
amazing, and I was thinking about it even before we saw that. And then when he makes it like when he suddenly in the editing does a thing with that, I was like, yeah, so like he's making sure that we're thinking about how that house represents the different versions of Xavier and also what the relationship between humans and mutants is versus what he wants it to be. All you had to do to make the rogue stuff work, I think, Shades, is just have it a lot earlier in the movie.
Sure. Yeah.
Just have it earlier for a couple of reasons. The big one is, I'm curious to know what you think about this. I'm unsure about how exactly the rules work of this time travel with keeping Wolverine there. If he just comes out of it, does all the stuff they've done so far just not work? Does that erase it? Is that the idea?
I actually
Because
think
I'm just not sure. Because the problem is if they could wake him up right now, because obviously they kind of have like an open window almost between dimensions right now, sort of, which it sounds weird, but it's the only way that you can reconcile the fact that what happens in the future is happening simultaneously with what happens in the past, even though obviously the past is the past and it's happened already, right? So we have to keep that window open so that we can sort of have these things happening at the same time.
that
But
was a great gag there with Wolverine walking through the metal detector, by the way. Just
yeah,
want to bring that
yeah,
up.
I love that.
Yeah, go on.
But
Sorry.
no, that's totally cool. But I'm just, but what I'm thinking is, if it's not true that if he got out of the mind leak thing and the past doesn't completely reset, then Wolverine has already done everything that he's gonna do in the past that matters
Well, they do.
when
They have a
when
line.
the rogue thing happens.
Sure. Yeah, like they have a line where um where Xavier says if we wake him up now, we might set ourselves on a darker path. So if they
I
do
don't know
wake
what
him
that
up,
means exactly, but okay.
so that means like as soon as they wake him up, then yes, everything changes, I guess. Like I guess, but at the same time,
That's a very vague line.
it is very vague. So
I just don't remember anybody straight up coming out and saying that like the link has to be open because okay, if you the problem with that idea is that when you like he's going to come out of it at some point. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like it's kind of arbitrary. So I mean like they have a purpose they're trying to accomplish, but it's not like that has anything to do with how the time travel works or how the power works. You know what I'm saying? So like I don't really understand that. I just so the problem I have with the rogue thing, unless that really is a thing, with the idea of having to use rogue when they use her, is that Wolverine has already used what he's doing to have young Professor X talk to older Professor X, which is the big thing that has to happen. So he's kind of done now.
yeah,
So
that's
you could wake him up now, and as long as time doesn't reset, everything happens the way it happens.
the thing that they really need to stop though is Mystique killing uh stop Mystique from killing Trask. And
But I don't remember Wolverine being essential in that.
well, Wolverine and Beast are trying to find her in this scene, so I think that's
Yeah.
you can kind of make that argument. But I also want to bring up how awesome this sequence is with the Magneto moving the stadium. I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't mean to make too big of a deal out of that, but it's a difficult thing to explain and talk about.
Yeah.
So it
Um,
takes a lot of words. I apologize.
no, I agree with I do agree with you that he might not be essential to this plot, but I guess yeah, it's at the same time, it does make it for a more dramatic film, so I'm happy to.
But that's why I want. But my point is that's why I wonder. I wonder if that had anything to do with why they cut the Rogue stuff.
Yeah.
If they're like, oh well, it doesn't really even matter that much. Like it was going to happen. Like if anybody thinks of that, it ends up looking like that stuff's there just so that we're in the future more,
Also,
not because they actually are doing anything that's going to be of any consequence.
I presume that little girl with the red hair just there was meant to be Jean, by the way. But that
Oh, that's a stretch.
I don't know. She had pretty red hair. She had red hair like Famke Janssen has in this film.
But
So
lots of people have red hair, and I don't want random mutants to just show up like that conveniently.
I don't know. I think that's definitely who that was meant to be. She's got the
Oh,
same tone of red hair. It's not like
okay.
regular red. You know what I mean?
Okay, Shades.
Because that should be the right age. So it's just like one of those things that's like that. I guess that's who that's meant to be. So though at the same time, why is she in DC? So
Yeah, why's she there? I don't know. Something that I thought of the last time I watched this movie that I'd never thought of before is that the only reason these Sentinels are purple is because they're purple in the comics.
yeah, yeah.
They are making this big deal out of patriotism and stuff. There's no reason that Trask wouldn't have colored them red, white, and blue.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, I guess they do have Trask Industries all over them though. So, I guess
Oh, that's fair.
it's his design. You're right. They are only purple because they are in the comics. But I remember when I first saw this design, I thought, oh, the face plate isn't like it is in the comics, but everything else is pretty cool. I mean, the chest vent is pretty big, but I do like how they've made them at least look like the comic Sentinels.
What I like
So
about it is that it's kind of overdone and very 70s in that it's not real sleek and streamlined.
yeah,
So like that giant air vent thing is hilarious. I mean
yes,
like it looks like it belongs like it looks like an air conditioner.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean it's fantastic.
It is. Yeah, it's very appropriate for the time. Yeah,
Or it could be, part of a vacuum cleaner or something.
yeah.
It's awesome. Okay, so what are these like hovering casket things?
So
Oh, they just let out the Sentinels.
yeah, they're
Okay.
storing the Sentinels. They showed earlier in the film they sort of come out, in like a ball or not a ball, but like in a heap, and then they extend into the Sentinels because they're adaptable. So
I think there's a reason they're casket shaped.
that's a great point. Yeah, that's really symbolic.
I mean, you've got death coming, and uh, anyway,
I
I
like that
do
Bishop
really
has
wish
atomic power. That's cool. I like that.
I do wish that Bishop had gotten those lines earlier, only because he has a really cool accent, and they should have let him talk.
Omar Sy playing Bishop is also really cool casting. He's a great actor. He is in that film The Untouchables. He also was just in Jurassic World.
Oh,
So
that's right, he was in that. Maybe
yeah,
they'll bring him back. Maybe if they do X Force, they'll bring him back for the future stuff briefly.
yeah. I was going to talk about this later, but this might be a good time actually. Like, the inference is that Apocalypse will be the final in the First Class trilogy. So what I'd like for them to do from here is just not be afraid to do other X-Men films. You can do X-Men films set in this new future with Cyclops and Jean and everyone back to life. Not that I want to see necessarily the same sort of X-Men film, but you can do like an X-Men, like a young X-Men, new X-Men type deal where you've got Cyclops leading this new team with people like Cypher and Rockslide and Pixie and you can just do different stuff. There's no shortage of mutants to use that they haven't done yet. Plus, I'd really like to see Mr. Sinister done at some point, since he's kind of the last major character to be done.
I would be very surprised if that wasn't the very next thing we did.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so if this is the final in the First Class trilogy, I mean, they can at least do something with the new X-Men that are going to be in Apocalypse, like Cyclops, Jean, Nightcrawler, Jubilee. You can do a film with those characters and not have Mystique and all that if you don't want to. So
Right? Yeah.
yeah, there's so many possibilities of stuff to do that I hope they do some different stuff. Selfishly, I would like to see some more with James Marsden as Cyclops or Kelsey Grammer as Beast. But
So I was talking earlier a lot about Echoes of X2. Uh, Important that the White House is in this again.
exactly, yeah.
I think it's kind of fun that they demolish it this time.
And the fact,
Like we got, and that it's in the past too. That's kind of funny.
yeah, yeah, and
There's an escalation of that, and it's in 1973.
yeah. Also, just the fact that the president, is attempted to be murdered here as well. Like, yeah, it's funny.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah. Mutant freedom now, shit.
Yeah, exactly. He will have no memory.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's all kinds of interesting things you could talk about with Nixon and stuff in this that we haven't even brought up. But
yeah,
and like I love all this alternate history stuff. It seems like Nixon always shows up in interesting alternate history things with comic book stuff.
yeah. It's funny. There's different. He shows up in futuristic things as well. Like, it's things that deal with the future as well. Um,
I think I like this version better than the one in Watchmen.
I definitely like this
Like
actor more. Yeah,
I think he's well, and even the makeup job, I think it's a little bit less of a cartoon caricature. Although
yeah,
it was, there are good reasons to make it so exaggerated in Watchmen.
sure.
So like, I actually I don't think it's really all that fair to compare them. But I think you're right. I think the actor is better.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be really interesting to see moving forward what Mystique turns into.
yes. It's
Because she is now somewhere in between Xavier and Professor X, and I think that's really interesting. This whole idea. I love that line earlier when she says, or when Magneto says, killing one person isn't enough, and she says it never was for you.
yeah, yeah,
She's not willing to go as far as he goes here, but she does think that one person needs to die. So what does she end up being later on? Now that she was talked down from that,
yeah,
some of the uncertainty of the future, I'm really excited about. Also, major plot thing that is very much an echo of X2, and that is, of course, that we've got an uneasy alliance with Magneto that turns into him being the big bad in the third act.
yeah, yeah. That's a great point. I
Do
love that.
exactly that same thing.
I loved that
Kill all
moment.
the humans.
Exactly. Yeah. And I did love that moment with you know, uh, all these years wasted fighting each other, Charles. Like, I love that line. It's to for them to come together in the end. It's like, oh wow, because that's that relationship that we saw in the trilogy, come to full circle here. It's really cool. And this I gotta admit, this is some cool X-Men stuff. Wolverine fighting a Sentinel. That's fun.
Kind of a thing fans have been waiting to see forever.
Yeah, yeah. And the Sentinel looks fine here. It's just that sequence earlier. Maybe it's because it was so dark that it looks so fake. But yeah, the Sentinels look fine in this scene.
They didn't look fully rendered to me. I mean, it looked almost like, I'm gonna go this far. I think it looked as bad as like one of those DVD like menu things. It was like that.
Oh man, this
And
is
then here's another bit that we did a lot with the first two X-Men movies, and I think is absolutely meant to be a callback. And this
yeah,
is gruesome.
this
But
is
having Magneto, control Wolverine because of metal, and here he doesn't have metal. So because he knows what his power is, he can just rib him all over the place with all this metal wiring and throw him. And he
Yeah.
throws him like he does in X2 and X3. And does he throw him really far in X1? I forget, but he's constantly throwing Wolverine.
In X1, he throws him like to the back of the train. Um, so yeah, he does it in that.
And then X2, I forget
I don't think he
where
does it in
there's
X2
a
because they're on the
maybe he
same
doesn't.
side.
There's a
Uh,
forest in X3 that he throws him
X3.
through. I think this is even farther than that forest
Yes.
this time. But I think that's kind of funny. But yeah, you see what I mean? Like, he does fight a Sentinel, but I don't think he does anything that's actually, like, paramount to this plan succeeding now.
No. Yeah, yeah. Now he is drowning,
That's
so he's in fact
that's all
fatal.
I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. But it's gonna work out anyway, and then they're gonna be able to take him out of it now that they've well, and also they do get kind of lucky in the future. I don't think this is a huge problem or anything, but of course, in the future, most of them get killed, and then they succeed. So now the future's different.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it really has anything to do with when you pull Wolverine out of his. Unless I'm wrong about that, but it certainly doesn't seem to.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's a little confusing.
I gotta admit I haven't really put that much thought into it, so
Okay.
it
The
doesn't
only
bother me
reason I
a
am
ton,
is
but
because it was a thing that I kind of said. I said the other day on a video, and a lot of people were like, "Oh no, it's clearly that." I'm still not convinced that it is.
yeah, I don't think anyone can say it's clearly anything because like it's you know, I I'm not so sure that it was fully thought out. So I don't know. I one thing I do love is the whole door or the whole side being ripped off there by Magneto. That's
That
like
looks fantastic.
yeah, that sort of aggression that we haven't really seen from Magneto with his powers because he's normally so sort of you know ballet like with how he
And then of
moves and
course,
that.
this
Yeah,
goes back to the cop scene all the way in X1, and
yeah,
listen to that music. That's the Magneto music from back from X2 again. But
yeah,
yeah, you Homo sapiens and your guns.
yeah.
We've been talking so much about the music. I got to ask you this question.
Hmm.
Do you think that Ottman continues with that theme into Apocalypse? Because I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I kind of think he shouldn't.
I understand why he might not. Um, I'm
I
okay
don't
with it
think he
if
should. And
I.
the reason I say that is because it's so much a thing that helps to bridge this to what we had before and all of that. Like we're gonna forge ahead and stuff, and like we haven't had the same theme for each movie. There's not a definitive X-Men theme really. I mean
Yeah,
that would be it if there was one now, of course. But I
now
mean,
it
like
is. Yeah,
I kind of think that if and I'm sure Singer will continue to work with Ottman. I kind of think he should get away from it
I
as
I
much as I
would
love.
be satisfied if something happens in the film where the X-Men all join together, this new team of X-Men, with Cyclops and Jean and Nightcrawler. If then like the dun, 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 like just that came in just there as well.
Subtly,
Sync.
yeah, but
Yeah,
maybe we don't need it in the opening credits.
I would understand that. I'm happy to hear it. I think it just depends on what sort of film they do. I guess that's not something I can say until I've seen it.
I
Um,
just feel like it means a lot to the themes we're dealing with here, and that we're gonna get away from that and have some, be talking about different things in the next one. So
I also
I don't
liked
know.
there that Sentinel kind of had the powers of Lady Deathstrike the way he
Oh
kills
yeah,
yeah
why
because
is Toad in this movie?
he has to be a fry cook you see.
Oh, does he? And he has to look like such a different character that you have to look at promotional material to even know that it's Toad.
It's funny because they have the exact same sound effect earlier in the film when he uses his tongue. Like I appreciated that there was the same sound effect as the first one, but yeah,
Why does he look so different? How did he grow up and look like that other guy?
why would
So
you
you're
hire him
telling
to
me
let him near your food? That's what I want to know. Jeez.
and you're telling me that Toad is like 45 in X-Men 1 or something? Like
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I guess it's okay. It might have been neat if he went off with Magneto in this or something, but then he would have to get screen time, and I don't know that I need that. So
Well, they did actually show him there for the purpose of showing that he would become a Brotherhood member. The way he sort of nodded his head in agreement. So it's
I agree with you,
I agree
Magneto.
with you, stranger.
I'm
Yeah.
tired of being a fry cook. It sucks.
I love this. Nixon's look later of, oh, look how brave I am. Like,
Yeah.
I love
And what's
Hank's reaction there of, oh no, Magneto's going to kill the president, not knowing that it's Mystique. It's yeah,
uh isn't it Beast that hits Magneto with the cure at the end of X3?
it is.
It's kind of interesting that he's injecting himself with things in the third act of this.
Yeah. I also don't see how it would completely nullify his mutant DNA, so the Sentinel couldn't tell. That's a little,
That's a really good point. It's like,
yeah,
well, you got no X gene anymore, and
yeah.
um,
There's our
I
3D moment for the film, by the way.
oh yeah, good. I keep wanting to point out some more of these X2 parallels. I meant to mention earlier that of course we've got to call back to the plastic prison at the beginning of this movie. That's a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, it was.
And again, I think it's really cool that all that stuff is used to great effect in creating a different story. Like it's not just there going, oh look kids, we're doing the same thing again. Isn't that cool? Like it's not like that. It all fits. Like it some of that's probably just natural and wasn't even thought of as being a thing that we're trying to, go back to the cool thing we made 15 years ago.
Yeah, yeah,
Another great line from Xavier. You got this great moment of choice, and he's giving it to her and freezing everything so that she gets to really think this out. It's almost like a freezing time. Again, this is a thing that he's done before in other
yeah,
movies, and when he says all you've done so far is save the lives of these men, that was the thing that got me in the theater too.
yeah. It's also interesting to think, what are these cameras filming right now? Like, just Mystique
Oh
staring at a
yeah,
bunch of
good
frozen
point.
people.
Yeah, actually, that's exactly what they would be. If anybody goes back and looks at that, they'd be like, "Oh man, there's this really stirring speech that happened right there."
Yeah. Because I
That's
mean, the
that's.
TVs were actually showing that because we saw everyone watching it. So
Oh
yeah,
my god, that's a good one. Yeah, unless he's powerful enough to freeze everyone on the planet, which he's not.
no,
At least I don't think he can do that.
not without Cerebro anyway. Yeah, it's
Well, remember that at the end of X2. Well, and actually, that's also another thing that reminds me of X2. With the thing the presidents are, by the way, really important in the X Men universe.
yeah,
Always have been. And when you go to the White House at the end of X2, they purposefully make sure that somebody, whoever it was, turned off all the camera equipment as well when they froze everyone. And here we didn't really have that.
yeah, yeah,
I never thought of that until you brought that up, and I think that's pretty funny. Yeah, see, that's the moment.
yeah, yeah. Kitty didn't remove her hands,
No,
or anything. So yeah,
it's just they win, and therefore the future is different.
yeah,
It
yeah. That's a good
really
point.
that's not real well thought through, pal.
Yeah, yeah. I won't disagree with you there. I think they should have at least had Kitty sort of lose her grip, on Logan.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that it sort of plays, or at least a lot of people took it this way, that when Wolverine briefly leaves his earlier self mind and his 1973 self takes over, that maybe if he did that for too long, that it would like reset everything or whatever. But I think it's supposed to more just be if he doesn't go back there, he's not going to do the thing he needs to do to make the future happen the way it's supposed to. And at that point, he hasn't yet. So that all totally works if that's where the drama is supposed to come from.
Yeah,
But that's the reason that I'm so glad the road cut wasn't released.
yeah,
You see what I'm saying?
yeah,
Because all that stuff, there's no drama to it once you know what the ending is. I mean, like on a first viewing, it's kind of fine, and it's fine from the perspective of them in the future because they don't get to see all this, so they don't know what Wolverine's done yet.
yes, yes,
So that's kind of okay, but it's just there's it does ultimately end up being kind of inconsequential. And I don't mean to belabor that too much, but now that I've looked at that again, I think I'm right about it. It's at least too ambiguous. for me.
I liked the moment just there as well where Magneto says goodbye, old friend, and Xavier says goodbye, Eric. That was really
Yeah.
cool. I liked
Oh,
that
good point. Yeah.
because since old friend has been something that's been done throughout all the films. Yeah, that was really nice. I liked that Xavier's not willing to call him a friend. It's yeah, but still is willing to let him get away. Um, so. And I liked this part here where Wolverine wakes up and he hears "First time ever I saw you," and like he did when he woke up in the 70s. I liked that.
I mean, it's kind of convenient, but whatever.
It's very convenient, but apparently it's like Wolverine's favorite song. So,
I
this
also,
is
or it's just,
trouble,
it's
man.
the song that, it's the song that's hilarious. That is the song that always makes Wolverine say, "Oh crap, what time period am I in?"
Yes.
I
Oh,
love how we're in the future, so this is a hologram.
yeah, yeah.
We're gonna really date this movie, of course, if we get to the year 2023 and we don't have those.
Yeah, I guess that's part of why the future it's left ambiguous what year it is technically, but like
It's really not though, because you can figure it out.
I mean, in the way that it doesn't say like the year 2023 when we get here, like it's, yeah, I guess,
Oh no, you're absolutely right. The problem, of course, is that what we're doing right now is we're saying that the past dates are set in stone, but everything else that hasn't told us what a date is yet, it's kind of ambiguous. But the problem is you can't make it too ambiguous because these are people that age at a certain rate.
yeah,
So I have a really hard time not looking at X-Men as 1999 and X2 as 2003. You see what I'm saying? I mean, like it's really hard not to look at it like that. Anyway,
well, I
we
mean,
should talk about all this stuff because it's important. Sorry, what?
well, like X-Men 1 doesn't take place in 2000. I mean, that's the thing. Like it's otherwise because it is the not too distant future. So yeah, but something I find
But I'm just
kind
saying, now that we've given dates to these things, it's very hard not to look at it that way.
of I don't know about that because I still think it matches up. But it's something that's funny there is Wolverine just like saw Beast and that line from Beast, "Morning, Logan, late start." I loved that. But just Wolverine is like looking at all these people amazed, and the one he comments on is Storm, who was still alive as far as he knew. It's kind of funny to me.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
Um,
I didn't really think of that. I thought, well, wasn't that just the first one he saw?
well, he saw Beast before that, and saw Rogue
Oh
and
yeah, that's
Iceman and
true.
Kitty and Colossus, so he saw a lot of people. Um,
Yeah, and the thing is, he didn't see Storm or anybody else die because he
yeah,
was in the past, so he was busy drowning.
yes.
In the theater, I really loved the way that thing played with
Yay! Sorry, go ahead.
I really love the way that thing played with Jean, uh, being sort of ambiguous for a minute. And if
Yeah.
that hadn't been her, is just it would have killed everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. And had Cyclops not appeared here, I would have cried. Just that was such. My heart was racing during this scene. I was like, "Is he gonna be there? Is he gonna be there? Is he gonna be there?" And then he was. I was happy. And that unnatural tone of red on that little girl is what I was referring to earlier. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess
that's
that's fair. I wasn't looking at it real close when you said that, so I didn't realize it was that unnatural. If it looks like it was spray painted on, then
yeah,
you probably have a point.
yeah. I also
And
like that.
Professor X still has his hover chair.
Yeah, that's great. What a great reference. That's really cool. I know he had it in the apocalyptic future, but like I do like that he, yeah, the floaty chair is something that's very, you know, 90s X-Men. So it's cool that they did that here.
Yeah, no, we just have a very straight up '90s X-Men right now. Like kind of everybody's there. Well, not
Yeah,
everybody, but
I love that moment as well. Welcome back. The way he says that, Patrick Stewart's awesome.
yeah, that is super cool. Because clearly he just reads his mind real quick and he's like, "Oh crap."
Well, I think he realizes the way that he says, 1973. He's like, oh,
Oh
it's
yeah, yeah. It's well, and I forgot about that because then he says we have a lot of catching up to do, and obviously he remembers from the past Wolverine from the future being there, so he knew inevitably this was going to happen at some point.
yeah, Yeah.
There would have been no way actually for him to know exactly what year or month it would happen in.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's actually really interesting. So I keep saying this, my big thing right now that I can't wait to find out about is what is Wolverine in this rebooted future? I mean, industry
Yes.
in this soft rebooted past or present or whatever. Like now and folks have called me on this and they're absolutely right about it. I think because of some weird wishful thinking thing on my part, I kept talking about the interesting possibility of Mystique carrying on something like the Weapon X program. There's no reason she would do that.
No, but it has been
Like that doesn't
confirmed.
make any sense
Sure.
the more I think about it. So I like people have been saying, well, she probably would just let him go.
It has been confirmed that Josh Hellman's playing Stryker in Apocalypse.
Interesting.
So I presume that he'll still appear in some way, maybe only as Mystique. So it might be kind of like Senator Kelly in X-Men 2. Um, but this little
Yeah. Well,
Mystique thing here was
and of course
added last
that goes
minute.
back
So
to X1 too, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. That whole thing with his eyes turning into Mystiques, that was something that they added last minute. That was not in the original script.
What?
Yeah, but apparently Singer thought like, oh, it's kind of a weird ending. It just being like, oh, here we go, we're gonna do X-Men Origins Wolverine again. So like
Wow.
yeah, did, and that
Well, here's the
changes
thing.
everything.
Nothing about what happened in the past would probably really change Weapon X, right?
Sure, yeah,
Like there's no like when future Wolverine leaves his body, I mean, unless just his being physically where he was right then with drowning is a butterfly effect.
yeah,
If you took Mystique out of the equation, there's no reason it wouldn't have happened exactly the way it did.
sure. And the
But where
future shows that because he
is
still winds up with the X-Men. So like you can argue that the events still occur.
well, yeah, but he can still wind up with the X-Men and Weapon X never happened.
Actually, you know what? Yeah, because like Xavier can find him and that. So yeah, you're
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
I mean, he's found him before. He could just say yes next time. I mean,
yeah,
like there's he could yeah. I mean, he could even tell him, look, this is gonna sound crazy, but I can prove to you with my mind what happened with this future version of you. You should join us,
yeah.
right? Like there's so anything could happen. My question is, why is she pretending to be Stryker, and where is the real one? Because nothing's happened to him. Did she kill him? Like, where is he?
No, but he would just be, I guess, with um, well, Dinklage, I guess, like with Trask. I don't
I
know.
guess the problem I have with it, and if it was an afterthought, I mean, it's a fun afterthought, but the problem is, did, she doesn't know Wolverine's history. Why would she think to specifically pick Stryker? Why would she do that?
That's a good point. Yeah. Oh,
I mean,
I
like,
guess
it's so fascinating. Like, if I'm going to be very disappointed if they don't think it through and do something super cool with it because it's such a weird choice.
like Jackman is definitely appearing in Apocalypse. So like
Right.
because he has been in every X-Men film. So I'd be a little disappointed if he didn't show up. So he is showing up, and then Wolverine will be his last one. And boy, am I going to have tears when that ends. It's the end of an era there. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with Wolverine in this next film in Apocalypse. What sort of role will he play? Because I imagine it'll be a very small one. So if it's just another cameo or if it's just wrapping up what they set up there, be interesting to see.
Or it's just somebody finds Alkali Lake and runs in real quick while he's going through Weapon X.
Hey guys,
I like the idea of Weapon X happening in the earlier mid '80s because that's right when the comic was published.
yeah,
Like that would be actually super cool if they did that. And I mean, I'm not saying that I want another solo Wolverine movie to redo Weapon X. I mean, I would love to see Weapon X dramatized correctly, but or, dramatized it a bit better. But I don't want to say correctly because you don't have to be just like the comics. But to have 2 out of 3 Wolverine movies be Weapon X would be really weird.
yeah,
Um, but so, and I don't mean to harp on this too much, but something else really fascinating about that ending is if you go back to X2. Stryker is talking to Kelly, who is Mystique.
yes, that's
And
a
then at
good
the end
point.
of this, Mystique is him. And I
Yeah,
mean, I don't want to read that in any way necessarily because I'm not saying there's anything really thematically being done with that, but it's kind of a neat weird reversal.
It's interesting as well when they show that in the original timeline, before Wolverine was sent back, Stryker got Mystique with the tasers still.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so she would have dealt with, or like had interaction with Stryker before X-Men 2. Um, so the
that's a
fact that,
great point.
yeah, so the fact that she goes into Stryker's, his offices and finds all the information, actually, that even kind of improves on that and builds on that more, which is nice.
Yeah, this is a guy she's dealt with before. Now, something that these movies have not really delved into or dealt with in any way is why she is so monosyllabic later.
Um,
She
yeah, well,
just never talks, and this early version of her is comparatively a motor mouth.
that's part of why I didn't care for this version of Mystique in First Class because I was like, I don't see the connection there. They're two different characters, and people can say that the First Class Mystique is more of a character, but I
Oh,
prefer
she
the
is.
silent
Yeah,
assassin Mystique. I just prefer that as a character. So as opposed to mutant and proud.
I think you can have both. I would just love to see her get there. I mean, like there's a lot of time, right? I mean, like between there's maybe 20 years. I guess I guess if we can't really call those later movies particular dates, it's hard to know exactly how much time is spent. But I mean, you're talking a lot of time.
And
But I don't know why working with Magneto for a long time would make her a quiet person. I'm just not
well,
sure.
they do say in this film that she was experimented on and all that sort of thing. So that whole
Oh
experience,
yeah.
I guess, would have completely changed
That's a
her.
great point. Maybe that's
Yeah,
what it is. Yeah, she's just
changed
such a
her
different
opinion on
person
humans and
after
everything.
that,
So exactly, yeah,
and like maybe she's just a lot colder and a lot, yeah. That would give her potentially that really cold and hard exterior. Something else you got to wonder, of course, is like how she survived all of that and how she escaped it,
yeah.
and because I mean that's all stuff that in the first timeline, obviously she survived it. How'd she get past? Oh, you know what? There's a huge thing that we haven't talked about yet. I can't believe we're in the credits now talking about this. But we need to bring up the whole business about her particular mutant gene being the thing that leads the people continuing Trask's work to make Sentinels that have different mutant powers.
Sure.
Never made any sense to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not sure why shapeshifting gets you to different kinds of and I've heard people say, well, it might not be the shapeshifting part of it, but then I'm like, well, why can't you just use any mutant gene to get there? Like, why that one?
And that's an interesting point because they
And
say
I
in
think
this
it would be
film,
so much more interesting if that was like I looked at the Rogue cut and I said, well, what if the reason they were experimenting on Rogue was because she was the person that led them to that, and that's why we didn't have organic Sentinels that could do all this until the future.
yeah, and that is implied as well in the Rogue cut, but something that they do say in this film is that they, had her blood on the pavement, but it was actually Magneto's. But they thought it was hers. And
Oh, that's right. That's
and
right.
Trask is looking at it going, this is extraordinary. I need to find her when it's actually um, Magneto's blood that they've scraped off the pavement. So
Wait, are you sure? Because she got shot,
she got shot, but they showed him hitting his head on the pavement.
but didn't her blood also go on the pavement?
I mean, it did, but like I think it's implied that it's Magneto because why else did they need to focus on him hitting his head and him stitching up his head? Because
Well,
it's
that's a good point. I guess I just don't know what part. I can't believe we're talking about it. I just don't remember what part of that area they were in when they looked at the blood or whatever. But
yeah,
but anyway, so here's the thing that if you don't know comics, you're just looking at this going, oh, okay,
yeah.
I guess I'll understand this when the next movie happens.
Oh boy, did this scene make me excited. Like it had already been
It's awesome.
announced that they were doing Apocalypse, but seeing this was like, ooh, this is some X-Men ground that we have not even like slightly covered in the movies.
Yeah,
So
I mean, there's just a grandness to this
yeah,
that is so super crazy comic book, and then like people are complaining about the makeup job of what we've seen so far, but like that looks a lot like I've seen him look in Origin in Apocalypse Origin stuff, and then you've got the Four Horsemen, and I don't know, like that's a great bone for the fans. And I have enjoyed so much all of this alternate history stuff that to end this movie after the credits with, okay, so we showed you how the JFK assassination was different, and we showed you how the Cuban Missile Crisis was different. Oh yeah, and a mutant built the pyramids.
Yes. Yeah, and
So
that
I guess that is the one thing that is super cool for people that have no idea what that is. Where they're like, oh, so mutants have to do with every important thing that ever happened.
yeah, yeah, and the fact that he's
Okay.
the first mutant. Well, I mean that they ended up sort of retconning that in the comics, but he is the first mutant in this next film by the look of the Comic-Con trailer.
Right.
So yeah, it's really interesting and really fascinating to see where they go from there. There's, like you said, there's a grandness to it that, as an X-Men fan, it's like, wow, we're finally getting to see Apocalypse, and it's cool how Marvel Studios have done this slow build to Thanos. I really appreciate that, but this is just something that's like, you know, getting to Apocalypse the way we are, and it possibly being because he senses that there's been a shift in, and things aren't the way they're meant to be. It's
Yeah.
really interesting stuff.
That's a great point. He's gonna try to change it, and he may have some sort of cosmic awareness or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's super exciting. Shanes, did you think? And of course, we'll wrap up because the movie's finished. In case you're wondering, the movie's finished. I'm now just looking at a pause screen that says the making and authorized distribution of this film supported over 15,000 jobs.
Yeah.
But but did you ever think when we were in that kind of dearth where they were trying to keep the franchise alive and the movies just really weren't working, that we would find ourselves a few years later in a place where not only did we get a great film, like a great X-Men movie, but all of a sudden the future's wide open and it could be great for a long time. Like I really kind of didn't expect to be here in 2015.
Yeah, I had hope when they first was and like finished the trilogy and they announced X-Men Origins Wolverine. They also announced X-Men Origins Magneto. So I thought
Yeah,
this will cover a whole new ground. We can do origins for all these major characters, and the future is bright. And then X-Men Origins Wolverine underperformed, and then it was very much left. Like there was a question about what was going to happen. And First Class, even though it was well received, didn't make a ton of money. And then, the Wolverine was like in limbo for a fair while there when Darren Aronofsky left. Like yeah, the X-Men franchise has been this kind of like uneasy, like, oh man, I hope this gets made, like type of vibe for a long time now. So the fact that we're now in this place where it's like, it's like the 2000s again. The future is not set. It's really interesting to see where we go from here. I can't wait to see what they do with this franchise now.
yeah, as in love as I was with First Class on a story level, I still wasn't sure where we were going after that. I
Uh,
mean, like I was like, okay, so are we in prequel territory for a long time now? And this doesn't like I like this movie a lot, but it doesn't really gel with a lot of later stuff. So we're just kind of retconning that, and like is this going to be this really awkward pseudo reboot thing? And of course, you remember a lot of people were saying, oh, First Class is a complete reboot.
yeah,
And I mean, it clearly wasn't that, but folks kind of wanted it to be, I think, because it was the only way you could reconcile that stuff.
and Matthew
And then,
Vaughn contributed to that because he did start saying that in interviews, and I'm just like, you.
oh, did he? Because that doesn't work, yeah. And then when Days of Future Past started being talked about, like just talked about before we saw anything, and we knew that McKellen and Stewart were coming back, and then when we started seeing things about it, I was like, this is a movie that shouldn't be possible.
Yeah,
I was like, I can't believe we're getting like just adapting that storyline. I thought was incredibly bold, and
yeah,
I didn't expect we'd ever like as big as that is. I just didn't think they'd go that far. And I mean, like, I'm trepidatious a lot about time travel stuff, but Days of Future Past and then using it to soft reboot in a way that's like 1,000 times more thought provoking and better executed than the way they did it with Star Trek and stuff like that. I found myself going, I don't deserve this. This is too good for me. Like I can't believe this feels like a fan like an X-Men fan's wet dream. How could we have gotten this lucky?
Yeah, and you're right. We did get so lucky. There was a point where I definitely did realize we're never going to see McKellen and Stewart and these guys back in the roles again. Like we'll see
Yeah.
Jackman, but we'll never see that cast again. And which is part of the reason why that final scene is so satisfying to see that not only was the events of X-Men 3, retcon to I don't want to sound too bitter about X-Men 3 still, because I'm honestly not anymore. It's like whatever.
Yeah.
I've moved
Yeah, me
on.
too.
But like it's this point where it's like, you know what, Bryan Singer came back and he fixed stuff. And I just love the fact that like you said, that reveal with Jean is really great, and Cyclops with his future glasses and everything, like seeing all that, and that the X-Men are back to being the way they were meant to be. It's so satisfying as someone who's loved these films and followed these films since 2000, to get this, and as a lifelong X-Men fan, it's very satisfying. And yeah, so thank you, Mr. Singer. I appreciate what you did for the X-Men franchise.
Yeah, I mean, he made the perfect sequel to X2 is ultimately what he did.
Yeah.
And it is his X3, it is ultimately X4 and it's First Class 2 all at the exact same time. And
Yeah.
like it sounds really neat. It also sounds impossible. Like the fact that the execution is as good as the concept for the most part. Again, I got issues with the time travel, but I mean, other than that, I just never thought I would get to see McAvoy, who I'm in love with now, and Patrick Stewart on screen together, even in the same movie, playing the same character.
Mm.
Like that stuff sounds like fan fiction.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's fan fiction in a good way. It's the kind of thing that people that fans would want, that somebody would come up with. It's super creative, but then a studio would be like, yeah, that's way too pandering for the fans and that kind of thing. Like, I just don't know. I'm gushing at this point. I just don't know, Shades, how they managed to strike a balance between making a thing that's so much for those of us that love those early movies and a thing that's accessible for general audiences. Everyone went.
And I think
Or I mean, a lot of people went, and I mean, there might be folks that don't like this movie. I don't want to say, oh, everyone likes it. I don't know. I've not talked to one person that didn't enjoy this movie.
yeah, like it's one of those films where I think everybody kind of just
Well, if you don't like it, that's totally cool. I'm just saying, I've not talked to anybody that didn't like it.
yeah, I think it's one of those films where like, everyone kind of appreciates, like even if you don't like it, I think you have to appreciate what was done here, and how it was done out of like love and
Reverence,
respectfulness.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember saying back in 2011, like the next film they should do is Days of Future Past. Like they
Yeah.
they have they should try and utilize that story that they can tell, and plus you can right a lot of wrongs from X-Men 3 and do some of that stuff. And I never thought they'd actually do that though. But when Lauren
Yeah, me
Shuler
neither.
yeah, when Lauren Shuler started saying at one point, I'd really love to do Days of Future Past as a film, I thought, oh, okay, well then there is some hope for that. And then when it was actually announced, I thought, oh man, like this could either be like my my happiest day or my worst nightmare, like how this film turns out. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was so satisfying. And
It seemed too good to
yeah,
be true, and then I saw it, and then it really felt too like I said, that opening where Ottman brings that theme back. I had an almost out of body experience. I was like, I can't even believe this is happening.
yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
know
same.
some people are gonna think I sound like a crazy person when I say that. I really didn't think I would ever see anything like this movie,
Yeah, yeah, and
and it was kind of a big deal to me.
absolutely, yeah. Seeing that, like hearing that theme again, to me, it was just, like we talked about it at length earlier, but like being a kid and being an X-Men fan and growing up loving that movie, to hear that again when, like we talked about, the X-Men haven't had a consistent theme in these movies, and it annoys me because the theme in X-Men 3, I'm just gonna say it, it sucks. It is so crap. No, all due respect, John Powell, your score sucked. So this
We compare that to Spider-Man 3 a lot. One thing you can say for Spider-Man 3 is the Venom theme in that is really cool.
the Venom theme, yeah, like the Sandman theme is pretty
It's
bleh, but
yeah,
yeah, the Venom.
but you know what I mean? Like I'm just saying that sometimes not so great movies have wonderful scores, and X3 didn't even have that really.
Oh yeah, like that's the thing. I even liked the score for X-Men Origins Wolverine. I think that's a really cool soundtrack. It had a cool, unique sound. That's the thing. I've liked all of the X-Men soundtracks except for three, and I'm like, is this just because I don't like X-Men 3? But no, it's an over-the-top bombastic score.
I honestly haven't given it all that much thought, but I never really cared for that theme all that much either. All the stuff in the first one's great.
Yeah, no, I really like the first one. It's such a unique sound, and yeah, but I do like this a lot, and yeah, it's really cool. Just the fact that so much, like you said, it's so many parallels to X2 and X1. We got the X-Men film that I didn't really think we'd ever get to see. So yeah, loved it.
Well, everybody, thanks a lot for listening to our commentary podcast. Sure hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave comments and tell us what you think about this movie and various things we brought up. And if anybody has better reads than me on that time travel, I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, Shades and I hopefully will be back with you again sometime in the not too distant future
He- uh,
with maybe something else X-Men that's not in the that's not film stuff, or maybe something even not X-Men. We're gonna try really hard to not make it another year, so
yes,
I will be inviting Shades back hopefully a lot sooner than that.
tremendous.
Shades, thanks buddy, this was a whole lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was fun, mate. Thanks for having me.
See you folks, thanks.